Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'm sorry. Guys, I need to just not look over at the chat because right when I click live, that's when the chat there's no chat until I click live, and then that's when the chat pops up. And the first thing I see when I look over at the chat is Giant DOC posting its equivalent to 900,000 US dollars. We all know what that's about, ladies and gentlemen. We all know what that's about. Poor Mohammed Hijab. Gosh, I didn't know it was that expensive to pay lawyer fees and so on for a case. But I guess it's just you declare war on a newspaper and Douglas Murray, and they're happy to put a lot of work into the trial, knowing that if they crush you, you have to pay for all that. My goodness.
Is it? How are the rules in UK with that? Because like in the States, there are ways you can get around it. Like if you file for bankruptcy,
Mm-hmm.
like and you're not like just like you can actually say you're going bankrupt and you don't have to pay legal fees sometimes. Like you have to pay your own lawyers, but like other people's legal fees, it can be weird when I've talked to people about it in the States. I wonder if it's different in the UK. Like you don't have to there's not like an enforcer squad really when it comes to things like that, and like it can affect your credit. But I mean, you can always just file for bankruptcy and get out of it. Because I know people who have been taken to court on frivolous lawsuits. Then the person declared bankruptcy and he didn't have to pay the legal fees, which was dumb. But I wonder how it is in the UK.
Don't know how that works, but he's been slapped with a bill. What did he say? £670,000. That's man.
Very Islamophobic.
It's a bad time to be a narcissist who can't stand criticism. Bad time. All right, so everyone, Giant DOC and everyone else just totally ruined my powerful intro. But
sure did.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce us to the topic of today?
Yeah, AP is in Britain, so David Wood is here with Discount AP, going over scientific miracles in the Quran. Because I'm actually interested in this because I'm very curious as to what the actual evidence for Islam is at this point. Like, let's forget about the Islamic dilemma. Let's forget about the second Islamic dilemma. Let's forget about Yasser Qadi just exposing the whole historical problems for the Quran and the Sunnah and how, it's just there's holes in the narrative. It's filled with utter, nonsensical arguments. The isnad hadith science is crap. You can't even trust. Just put all that aside for a minute. What is the actual evidence to believe that some guy in Arabia who claimed he had revelations from God actually did receive revelations from God? At this point, I don't know. The argument that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, debunked. The argument that there are numerical miracles in the Quran, debunked. Like even Muslims have helped debunk that one. Scientific miracles, Ali Dawa admits is just crap. And so we'll go over more of that today. But that's what basically happened is that they admitted on YouTube it was a crap argument, and then all the Muslims just switched over to TikTok where it hasn't been fully exposed yet and are just trying to find gullible people to fall for this nonsense that there are scientific miracles in the Quran. And it's just another crap argument that's been exposed as an absolute lie. So what is the actual evidence to believe in Islam? Even without the problems, if the Islamic dilemma didn't exist, there still is no reason to be a Muslim because they don't have any evidence for the religion.
Yeah, and I was saying this 2023 and 2024, maybe a little before that, but all the arguments that they were using in 2005, 2008, 2010, they were all based on lies. Guys, when I say based on lies, I don't mean I disagree with the argument or something like that. Like an atheist can use the problem of evil against the existence of God or something like that. I don't call that a lie, right? I'll disagree with your conclusion and explain why I disagree with your conclusion. We'll discuss your premises and so on, but it doesn't require you to lie, right? When we're talking about Islam, the perfect preservation of that was a lie. Right? It was just a flat out 100% lie. Anyone who knows anything about what the Muslim sources say about how the Quran was put together, anyone who knows about textual manuscripts and textual variants knows that's a lie. Anyone who knows about different Qurans in different parts of the world today knows it's a lie. And yet they were using that as their main argument. It's a miracle. Scientific miracles was a lie. This Muhammad had such perfect character. He must be sent from God. That was a lie. And so, yeah, we're in the same ballpark here of, okay, well, if all the arguments you guys have been using have all been lies, what do you actually have? Why should anyone believe in Islam? And as I showed in my debate with Daniel, the main argument the Quran uses for Jews and Christians is the Quran is confirming our books, so we should confirm the Quran in return. Terrible argument, but it's way worse if the Quran isn't even confirming the Bibles. Then it's really, really, really bad. It's already bad, but then it's really, really bad. So anyway, we've noticed that all their arguments have been exposed, completely debunked. We've exposed their dawah guys as complete liars. And so we wonder, what's the new argument going to be? And you go back to 2022, 2023, 2024. Their new strategy was get their dawah guys like Muhammad Hijab on popular podcasts like Jordan Peterson and stuff like that. What were they looking for there? They were looking for an atmosphere of ignorance. They're looking for a host of a podcast who doesn't know anything about Islam. So they were trying to get on like Joe Rogan and stuff like that. They really wanted to get on Joe Rogan. What? Joe Rogan doesn't know anything about any of this stuff. This would allow them to give the same exact stupid debunked arguments, but to a person who has no clue how to respond and to all his followers who don't know any better, right? And so the idea is we can dupe a bunch of people into accepting arguments that we know have been debunked, right? So I look at that and go, oh, so you're not actually going to come up with whatever your new evidence is. You're just going to recycle the same arguments that you know are debunked. You're just looking for people who don't know how to respond. This is when it all started, where they won't actually engage with people who know how to respond to the dawah script, right? They won't engage anymore. We show up to Speaker's Corner, they run. And they'll run from anyone who knows the dawah script, and they'll run to people. They'll look for people who don't know. They're looking for an atmosphere of ignorance. So we saw that going on for a while, pointed that out for a while. But now you see, now they're looking, then they were looking for influencers, right? Andrew Tate, Sneeko, who had guys who have millions of stupid followers who don't know anything about Islam. Get those guys to convert and then regurgitate the same stupid arguments to their followers. And some of them will believe them. So you get converts who convert based on completely debunked arguments. And now you've got, of course, the Lily J crowd doing the exact same thing, but they have an entire platform, TikTok, where they're taking all the arguments that have been completely destroyed for years, but they're talking to a bunch of people who are 13, 14 years old and who weren't there to see them completely destroyed and debunked. And they're using them. Guys, what is this, right? IP is asking a completely reasonable question. Your arguments have been debunked. You guys admit they've been debunked. You admit it. You admit it when you're speaking honestly. But then you'll go and use the exact same arguments on people who don't know any better. And what are we asking? We're saying, well, is there any actual evidence for Islam that you could present and would stand up to any sort of scrutiny? When we ask that and you avoid us and you run to 12-year-olds with arguments that you know have been completely destroyed and use the same arguments, it starts to look like you're being deceptive, and it's just obvious. You know none of your arguments can stand up to scrutiny. If you had one that you thought could stand up to scrutiny, you'd be using it. Instead, you're looking for pockets of ignorance, man. Pockets of ignorance. This is bad, guys. This is bad.
Yeah. It's, seriously, at this point, again, Christians have the resurrection argument. Currently, there are studies coming out on the reliability of the Gospels. Luke Vandewey and Jason Williams just published a groundbreaking study last year on the onomastic congruence of the Gospels, showing that they are some of the most reliable documents from the ancient world. They were in their study, they found the Gospels and Acts are even more reliable than Josephus in terms of their naming structure and naming pattern. Like Josephus got, in their study, got 6% accuracy in terms of naming patterns, but the Gospels got an 86% accuracy, well above what documents of the ancient world were getting. So groundbreaking studies are coming out that are showing the Gospels are incredibly reliable. Plus, we still have the resurrection argument. What do Muslims have? We have Yasser Qadi basically showing the entire Hadith collection is just garbage. Like the Hadith science is crap. You had them a couple years ago showing there are holes in the narrative for the standard Islamic narrative. Like, so the exact opposite is happening with Christianity. We're getting even more and more better points we can use. Better studies are coming out to argue for the reliability of our scriptures. But in Islam, things are just, it looks awful. So like, what is the actual evidence they could use to make us think that some guy in the 7th century in Arabia actually did receive revelations from God? Like, at this point, like, nothing.
And I pointed that out repeatedly. Well, I've been pointing out that you go back to the Christian apologists in 2006, 2008, 2010 who were responding to Islam. Guess what? We're all still here.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel Green, Jay Smith, me, Sam Shamoot, we're all still responding to Islam. You go back to the Dawa guys from 2008, where are they? The guys who were actually engaging back then, where are they? They're gone. Different batch from 2012, 2014. Where are they? They're gone. The Dawa guys who came out in 2018, 2020, they're the ones who are crumbling right now, right? Muhammad Hijab, all these guys, they're all crumbling right now. So why is it? Why is it that the Dawa guys just don't last long? It's because the only way you can be successful in Dawa is to come out with a new way of lying, and that'll work for a little while. And then it gets exposed. Yeah, perfect example right here, right? Daniel Hakikachu came out. He had the new way. He had his new tactic. I'll just cite a bunch of studies, completely misrepresent them. But I know the people I'm talking to haven't read these studies, so I can say what I want about them, right? I can say, oh, there's a new study by Professor Upingfoth who says that Islam is 100% true. How can you deny this proof? Well, guess what? No one's going to know how to respond to that because you just made it up, right? Or if they're actual studies, but you completely misrepresent them. And then eventually, that worked for a while. He was doing that with everybody. He was just he'd go in there and cite 20, 30 sources and stuff. No one's read those. So he'd get away with it. And we'd all think that he's representing those sources accurately. Eventually, he started quoting something that's like, wait a minute, I know what that one says. I know that's not what it said. I know that one. And then, of course, he has this debate with you. And you read all this stuff, and we're pointing out how he's been completely twisting and misrepresenting things. And then what happens? Well, he'll still, he had some momentum, so he's still posting and so on, but it's just been loss after loss after that. Why? People have caught on. People have caught on. Doesn't work anymore. So, speaking of that, should we go ahead and check out a video?
I guess so.
Yep. So along those lines, Hal, since we're not lying, we don't have to use a method that's based on lies, and then eventually everything falls apart and we leave. But it's the same thing with our arguments. Why are we using the same arguments that we're using 2005, 2007, 2010? You could go back earlier. You can go back to the beginning. We're using the same arguments. We're using the exact same arguments. Why? New information can come in that helps you strengthen your case and so on. But we're using the same arguments. Why? Because our arguments aren't based on lies. If you just make things up, then once it gets exposed, you're kind of in trouble with your argument. But what are they doing? They're looking for 12-year-olds who don't know any better. This entire religion is a religion of mass deception. Absolutely pathetic. One comment real quick we'll check out. A says, hi, David Wood. I'm a Muslim. I hope you love me. I do. Just don't interpret love as telling you that your fake prophet is a true prophet or something like that. If you're a Muslim, you're following a fake prophet. And so in order to demonstrate our love to you, we will completely expose the false prophet that you are following so that you can get out of that religion of deception and follow the truth.
Yeah, it's a religion that is destroying the world right now, as I'm finding in my research. Just the amount of research showing that all the harm that comes from Islam is mind-boggling. And these are actual legit studies that have been published over the past 30 years.
All right, so let's check out this first video clip. This dude is seriously creepy.
This is one of these like, TikTok famous.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
This guy is like TikTok famous. He does these. This is part of his shtick. Sometimes he holds a teddy bear. But he does like this weird like face thing. I'm trying to remember how many subs he has on TikTok. It's a ton of subs. I think he's got 1.4 million followers on TikTok.
So you see how this
And he-
works, guys? We destroy an argument. We destroy an argument. And then you'll have a guy on TikTok holding a teddy bear, being super animated, seeming like he's gearing this towards 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds who it's just pathetic, man. Dawa is absolutely, completely, utterly, totally pathetic.
I will say the good news is this is my response to him. It got just under 900,000 views. It's one of my biggest responses on TikTok to a Muslim. Might be my biggest response to Muslim on TikTok. So the good news is that, you know, people like myself, Big John Steele, Coley, have been making some splashes over there. Like recently, a TikToker named Coley, he was also on Jubilee, posted a video like showing 5 errors on the Quran. It got over 6 million views. And it even bothered Sheikh Uthmani to try to respond to it. They were so triggered by the video. So luckily that a lot of the information is getting out there.
Yeah, and so guys need to check out which Christian apologists are responding to this stuff on TikTok. And if you're on TikTok, make sure you watch their stuff, share their stuff, and support them, because someone's got to do this, right? Someone's got to do this. Mm-hmm. They're getting desperate. They're getting desperate. The whole podcast thing isn't working out anymore because they're being exposed. So what do they got left? They got Lily J and they got TikTok to lie. If you shut them down over on TikTok, where are they going after that? Where? I just have to say, though, I mean, for a religion, the main moral accusation against which is that they're obsessed with doing things to kids, sitting there looking like a pervert with a teddy bear is not helping. But, you know, I guess if that's all you got, that's all you got. Hey, look at this. We got Mike Winger, king of the Islamic dilemma. Do you love me too, David? Yes, because I'm commanded to love my enemies. There we go. All right, guys, so get ready for the creepiest thing you've ever seen in your life and be ready to wash your eyeballs out. But as creepy as this is, it's not as bad as his actual argument. Let's see. So this is his video, not your response, the first one?
Nope, this is my response.
Oh, this is your response? Okay. So we're getting his argument and your response. Let's see.
So I want you to look at this picture right here. This is a pattern of how the moon moves throughout the sky. And now I want you to look at this picture. This is an old date stock. They look pretty similar, don't they?
Uh-huh.
Well, according to this verse of the Holy Quran, Allah will cause the moon to move like an old date stock. This is exact proof that Islam is the true religion.
Ancient people knew how to track the course of the moon, as well as many other celestial bodies. Are you Muslims even trying at this point?
Yet people will still deny.
Gee, I can't imagine why.
Your response is what we could call an even if, but in fact response when combined with mine. So even if the Quran were saying that the moon follows this pattern in the sky, would not be a scientific miracle because, especially in the ancient world, they were really, really, really good at tracking the movement. They were obsessed with it. They were obsessed with tracking the motions of the heavenly bodies and so on. So
yeah, it's not even just the moon. They knew where this star was going to be at this time in this place. Like the Babylonians were obsessed with this, and that's right by Arabia. I mean, like you can even find mentions of the course of the moon in pre-Islamic poetry. Not like they're not doing like scientific analysis, but you can clearly see like they're interested in what the moon looks like, where it's moving, where it's going to be. I don't know a scholar that would deny that, but I mean, like most of the alleged scientific miracles in the Quran can be divided into 2 groups. One, it's the miracle of reinterpretation. It didn't originally mean that, but now it's been reinterpreted to be in line with the scientific truth. The other is ancient people just knew this stuff, like the course of the moon, the fact that meteors had iron in them. Like they just knew this stuff. So like it's like this is one of those second cases where it's just an ancient fact. People knew. They knew how to track the moon. I remember reading John Walton, who's a biblical scholar on this. He was just talking about how like they knew like when the moon on certain days would be like a full moon or a new moon or a crescent moon. Like they were predicting this like months, years in advance. Like
And I just wanted to point out, because we're going to check out your video on how they could actually prove some of this. But there was a Muslim a few years ago, Hamza Sortsis, who used to use the scientific miracles argument. It was his go-to argument until he ran into an actual scientist, atheist scientist, and tried to use that. And he got completely humiliated in front of everyone. And this caused him to rethink the argument. And by the way, that's the reason Ali Dawah eventually admitted that the argument has been debunked. Hamza Tzortzis came out and said it. And then Ali Dawah went ahead and admitted it. But Hamza Tzortzis, he actually broke things down. He said, what would it take to actually prove that the Quran is making miraculous scientific claims, or claims that couldn't have been known at the time? What would you need to show? You'd need to show three things, basically. One, you need to show that's what the Quran is actually saying. It's not saying something else. It's saying the thing that is being confirmed. This isn't you putting some modern spin on it. It's what is actually being claimed by the Quran. So one, you need that. Two, it needs to be something that wasn't known at the time. If people knew it and the Quran says it, then okay, you're just saying what people knew at the time. That's not miraculous scientific knowledge. People already knew it. And three, you have to know that whatever you're saying about science today is actually correct. In other words, you don't want to say this confirms it, and then 5 years from now, another theory comes out and that theory is discarded or something like that. Because then you'd be saying the Quran was confirmed by a theory that was eventually disconfirmed. And what are you going to do then? Miracle of reinterpretation, right? So he goes ahead and lays those things out and then points out, guess what? There's nothing like that in the Quran. You don't have anything where you read the verse and you actually understand it correctly, and it's making some sort of claim that is turning out to be accurate and was not known at the time and is being confirmed by settled science today. He said, you don't have anything like that. Guess what? He's correct. And me and IP are using two of those issues right now in our responses. So IP's pointing out, hey, even if that's what the Quran is saying, this is something that people would have known at the time and therefore can't call it a scientific miracle. Whereas I will argue that's not even what the Quran is saying at all.
Yeah.
So you put both those together. So two massive problems, two massive fails, two massive failures of the argument. It fails in both ways. It could fail, apart from because we're not even gonna argue about what science today says. Not really relevant for this discussion. We'll go ahead and grant that the moon looks like it moves in a S pattern or something like that. The other two things, it fails on both of them.
Yeah. And later, I have a way Muslims could prove there are scientific miracles in the Quran. It's a very simple way to do it, which we can get into later, but they can't. There would be a very easy way to do it. They never do this, though. So we can talk about that in a little bit, though.
All right. So let's go ahead and read the verse, multiple translations, and we'll see if this refers to an S-shaped pattern in the sky that the sun is following. Ready? Let's go and read this first. So Surah 36, verse 39, got a bunch of translations here. And for the moon we have appointed mansions till she return like an old shriveled palm leaf. Notice it doesn't say the pattern that it has followed in this sky is going to resemble an old shriveled palm leaf. It said it says the moon is going to return and it's going to look like an old shriveled palm leaf. So it's not talking about the journey it takes in the sky. It says it's going to return, and when it returns, because it disappears for a little while, then when it returns, it looks like an old shriveled palm leaf. Let's see what other guys translate. Let's see if anyone tries to give them a scientific meaning. And the moon, Yusuf Ali, and the moon we have measured for her mansions to traverse, till she returns like the old and withered lower part of a date stalk. Hilali Khan, and the moon we have measured for it mansions to traverse, till it returns like the old dried curved date stalk. You guys catching that? Mm-hmm. It returns like an old dried curved date stalk. What's that sound like, guys? Crescent moon, and there's a part of a dried date stalk that looks like a crescent moon. Is this talking about its pattern in the sky? No, it's saying the moon looks like a crescent. Hey, look, it looks like an old date stalk. That's a yellow crescent. Shakir, and as for the moon, we have ordained for it stages till it becomes again as an old dry palm branch and so on. I'm not seeing anything miraculous here. Nope, I don't see anyone giving it the scientific meaning that our little Muslim friend was suggesting.
It's very Islamophobic of these translators.
It is. It's very bigoted. Very bigoted.
How dare they?
Yeah. Let's look at what the Study Quran says. The commentary of the Study Quran. Is the Study Quran going to say that this is referring to this S-shaped pattern and the S? So guys, keep in mind the argument, right? The idea is if you follow the course of the moon in the sky, it resembles kind of an S-shaped. And a date palm is kind of an S-shape. So when it says the date palm, it's talking about the motion through. And oh my goodness, how could anyone have known this? IP already pointed out they would have known that. But another problem here, it's just not what the Quran is saying. Let's look at some commentaries. This is the Study Quran on this verse. So they translate it, and for the moon we have decreed mansions till it returns like an old palm stalk. Okay. This verse is a reference to the waxing and waning of the moon through the 28 stations of a single lunar month. Then we have like an old palm stalk. What's that mean? Does that mean that's the S shape that it takes in the sky? Like an old palm stalk is a reference to the appearance of what remains from a date cluster after its fruit has been removed and it has withered, when it resembles the thin crescent moon in shape, width, and color. You take an old date cluster after its fruit has been removed, and what does it look like? It looks like a little crescent moon. So the Quran is saying, hey, the moon looks like a crescent, just like the palm, an old palm stalk looks like a crescent. Is that miraculous?
Yeah.
Is that miraculous knowledge, everyone? Because that's what's being put forward on TikTok to stupid people who don't know how to look any of this stuff up. And they're saying it's a miracle, and this is why people should convert to Islam.
Yeah, and in my video, I didn't even get into this because I was like, this is so dumb. I'll just grant for your interpretation for the sake of argument and just show the ancient people knew how to track the course of the moon. Like, so even if your odd interpretation that no commentator has is right, it doesn't mean anything, because we know the Greeks tracked the moon. We know the Babylonians tracked the moon. We know the Egyptians tracked the moon in many celestial bodies. Like, how is this? How do you guys not know this? Like, clearly the Arabs could have just got that information from the cultures around them, or they just would have been in the same boat where they could just say, yeah, the moon is kind of there. Now it's kind of lower. Now it's kind of higher. Like, it would have been hard for anyone in the ancient world to do when you were just looking at the night sky every night in the ancient world.
Let's look at two more commentaries, just so you don't think, well, who cares what the Study Quran says? Well, here's Tafsir Jalalain. Tafsir Jalalain, one of the most popular commentaries of all time. And the moon, blah, 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 going into grammar stuff. 28 phases, in the middle here. 28 phases in 28 nights of every month. It becomes concealed for 2 nights. Oh no, the moon's gone. The moon's gone. Where's the moon gone? It becomes concealed for 2 nights when the month has 30 days, and for 1 night when it has 29 days, until it returns. So the moon disappears, then it comes back, and it looks like what? Looks like a thin crescent. Until it returns during its final phase, seeming to the human eye like an aged palm bough. In other words, like the stalk with a date cluster when it ages, becoming delicate, arched, and yellowish. So you take a date cluster and you take the stalk, and when it's old, it becomes delicate, arched, and yellowish in a crescent shape, like the moon. And let's go to Muhammad's cousin or nephew, according to Daniel Hakikachu, Ibn Abbas. And for the moon we have appointed mansions, like the mansions of the sun. It increases and decreases till she return like an old shriveled palm leaf. Where are we getting the miraculous scientific knowledge here, guys? Everyone understand this? For 14 centuries, ask Muslims, what is this talking about? What's it talking about? That the moon goes through these different phases and stuff, disappears, eventually comes back looking like an old shriveled date palm stalk. Mm-hmm. What's that mean, guys? Well, the old shriveled date palm stalk looks like a crescent moon. So the Quran is saying, hey, and then it comes back looking like that thing on the ground over there. So what's this? It's making an observation. Look, crescent. That's all it's saying. Miraculous scientific knowledge here. Yes, according to these guys, it's talking about the path it takes for the sky, and oh my goodness, this is amazing. So, guys, now that we've read the sources, we'll go ahead and play that one more time because it's short, And look, there are two ways. So one, you can say, this is what everyone thought the verse meant, and there's nothing miraculous here. And none of them would have even claimed that there's something miraculous about the amazing knowledge in the Quran there. No one would have even claimed it. But in the 70s, you had Maurice Bucaille, who got paid by King Faisal to come up with all these scientific miracles, and he made idiotic arguments like this, and Muslims ran with them because anything that confirms their religion, they'll run with. So anyway, for 14 centuries, no Muslims thought it meant that until this was put forward as miraculous scientific confirmation. And of course, as IP pointed out, even if you granted their new interpretation, even if you said, hey, 14 centuries of Muslims, they had no idea what this verse meant, it really means this thing. Even if you say that, on what planet would they not have known this back in the ancient world? They did know this sort of thing.
Pretty dumb.
And so what do? You hold a teddy bear and you act really animated and excited because you're gearing this towards 8-year-olds. Let's watch this one more time.
Proof that Islam is the truth.
It's the proof.
So I want you to look at this picture right here. This is a pattern of how the moon moves throughout the sky. And now I want you to look at this picture. This is an old date stock. They
That you bent to.
look pretty similar, don't they?
Uh-huh.
Well, according to this verse of the Holy Quran, Allah will cause the moon to move like an old...
Does it say it's going to cause the moon to move? Look at this guy's face, by the way. Gosh, this guy's creeping me out, man. Takes a lot to creep me out, but just the thought that this guy's gearing this stuff towards kids and these guys are all obsessed with banging kids, it's pretty sick and evil. But look what he says. Does the Quran say the moon moves in a pattern over the period of a month where if you looked at it, it looks like this? No, it says it returns like the old date stock. It returns. It disappears, and then when it comes back, it looks like the old date stock. Dude just lied about what the Quran says. So this is one of the requirements. What's the Quran actually saying? Is it saying what he says? No, he had to actually lie about the Quran to get it to say that.
Mm-hmm.
What a creep. What a creep
Powerful.
is it? Powerful. Let's see.
date stock. This is exact proof that Islam is the true religion.
Ancient people knew how to track the course of the moon as well as many other celestial bodies. Are you Muslims even trying at this point?
Yet people will still deny.
Gee, I can't imagine why.
Yes, well, the one thing he got right is, yes, we will continue to deny the proof of Islam. Because why? Because every argument you give us is exactly like that. It's flat out deception. It's, hey, here's an argument and we're duping a bunch of dumb people. So this argument must be true, right? Well, let's go ahead and check it out. Let's look into it. Oh, that's not what the Quran is saying. And two, even if the Quran were saying that and everyone else just misunderstood it for 14 centuries, still not miraculous scientific knowledge. So where's your evidence? And then they're shocked. How could anyone reject this proof?
And, you know, combining this with the Islamic dilemma, even if they were right, that the Quran had like amazing scientific knowledge that no one could have known, now we have a huge problem because it's still confirming the Torah and the gospel, the prior scriptures. So like we have to come up with some sort of, obviously what we know as standard Islam cannot be true, because how can Islam be true while it's confirming the prior scriptures? So still the amount of like hills or like mountains they need to overcome to like argue Islam is true is just, it's beyond belief at this point. It's astronomical. They can't. There are too many problems. It's just so much easier just to discard Islam. But even with that, their arguments to try to show Islam is true are awful. They're some of the worst I've ever seen. I never was more convinced that Islam is false, so I started debating with Muslim apologists. First, where they were trying to show me Muhammad's in the Bible, and I was so convinced that this is just false from how bad their arguments were. And then when they got to scientific miracles, I was like, good God, this is just an obvious false religion. How could anyone believe in this?
Mm-hmm. And you always have to wonder, because, I mean, keep in mind, there have been. There are Christians who would use bad arguments for Christianity, right? But guess what? You don't have to. You can use good arguments, and those are the ones we go to. In Islam, all you ever get are bad arguments. And we sit here and ask, okay, so suppose all these guys, all your champions of Dawah and so on, all just happen to be using bad arguments. Well, those bad arguments have been exposed. You got any good arguments? And what do? You run. They run. And then they run to people who are ignorant, and they use the same arguments that have been exposed as terrible arguments. What is this religion, man? Pure deception, pure deception.
Yep. We
had Ryan here who says, Deha knew where the moon always was. That's true. That's true. And our Muslim friend here, A, says, hi, David Wood. Not all prophets did miracles. Is that the reason Muhammad isn't a prophet? No. I wouldn't say someone is not a prophet if he doesn't do miracles. I would say that Muhammad is a false prophet because he meets all the requirements of a false prophet. Every possible way you can evaluate this guy, he turns out to be a false prophet. And I'll just give you an example. We can, hey, if you want to join us for a discussion sometime, happy to do that. But I'll just give you an example. So because IP just brought up biblical prophecies about Muhammad. So the most popular one of all time is Deuteronomy 18:18, where we're told that there's going to be a prophet like Moses. And you look, and if you actually bother to read it, which sadly Muslims don't do, it's about a fellow Israelite prophet. So there's that. But here's the thing. If you go just 2 verses later, they're saying 18:18 proves Muhammad's a prophet. If you go just 2 verses later, it gives 2 criteria of a false prophet. It says, don't, under no circumstances, believe someone who meets these 2 criteria. Muhammad met both of those criteria. And you can just go through every warning you have in the Bible about false prophets. Muhammad is the most obvious false prophet in history. There's no one I can think of, with the possible exception of Joseph Smith, who meets so many different requirements of being a false prophet. That's why he's a false prophet.
Hey, I just had an Old Testament scholar on my channel Thursday. He has never looked into Islamic arguments. We showed him an Islamic video arguing that Deuteronomy 18:18 is about Muhammad. He said it was garbage. It was crap. If you want to put, I've just showed you, I have my slides from that stream. If you want to put these up here. Yeah. So, I mean, like, this whole argument is debunked 3 verses earlier. You guys, all Muslims will always go on among their brothers. And so they would say, well, if God is talking to Israel, the prophet has to come from the brothers of Israel. The problem is that you're reading in English. In the Hebrew, the phrase your brothers or among your brothers is always a phrase that is used to refer to Israelites in the surrounding context. So look 3 verses earlier. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, comma,
don't ignore that. Yeah, even though they want to fixate on from your brothers, and they say, oh, that's the brothers of the Israelites, and not realizing when it's talking to a group of Israelites and it says from among your brothers, it means your brothers, the fellow Israelites, and so on. But look what right before that, from among you. From among you, from among you. My goodness. Yes, it's talking about the Arabs. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. If you look throughout Deuteronomy, over and over again, from your brothers means Israelite, Israelite. In fact, in Deuteronomy 17:15, it excludes foreigners. You can raise up a king from among your brothers. You shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you. The only time from among your brothers in Deuteronomy is used to refer to non-Israelites. It's qualified as the people of Esau, never as the people of Ishmael. Okay, so when it shows up in Deuteronomy, the phrase refers to Israelites unless it's qualified like this. So when we go to Deuteronomy 18, it's not qualified in any way. Therefore, the surrounding context, Deuteronomy 24:14, Deuteronomy 17:15, 15:7, all points to this just being a phrase that it means an Israelite. Therefore, the prophet of Deuteronomy 18 has to, by necessity, be a descendant of Israel, which is why it could only be Jesus. And guess what? This is what John actually argued. John pointed out over and over throughout his gospel that the prophet to come is Jesus. He has people saying it. He has Jesus. He points out Jesus in John 5:46 says Moses wrote about him. Then you have John 12:49 where Jesus alludes back to Deuteronomy 18. He does it in John 7:16, John 8:28, John 15:15, John 17:8, keeps alluding back to Deuteronomy 18. And then you have Acts 3:19-22, where Peter directly says Deuteronomy 18:18 is about Jesus. So he actually can meet that requirement because he was an Israelite. Muhammad isn't. By necessity, Muhammad cannot be the prophet of Deuteronomy 18:18 because it says he has to be an Israelite when it says among your brothers or their brothers. That is a phrase that refers to Israelites.
And so, as I pointed out, you've got two criteria of a false prophet. Just 2 verses after that, IP pointed out this argument doesn't work at all, because if you go back, this definitely isn't talking about Muhammad. But keep in mind, this is another argument against Muhammad. Why? Because he said, we find Muhammad in our scriptures. We do. It's not Muslims by doing mental gymnastics and lying, they find him. It's Jews and Christians can find Muhammad in our scriptures. Where do we find Muhammad in our scriptures? We don't. Every time you give us an example, it's something like that, and it turns out to be based completely on lies. Guess what? That's your best one. What we just went through, as pathetic as that was, that's the best one Muslims have for Muhammad being in the Bible. And it's a passage which rules him out as being the fulfillment and rules him out as a prophet, period. Just to be clear, if Muhammad had been around during the time of Moses, Moses would have ordered people to execute Muhammad for being an obvious false prophet and for violating these basic criteria. So think about this. There are 2 main arguments that the Quran gives to Jews and Christians for why we should believe in Muhammad and the Quran. The number one, by far, the number one reason in the Quran for Jews and Christians to confirm Muhammad as a prophet is that Muhammad and the Quran confirm our scriptures. And Muslims today tell us, nope, that's not even true. It doesn't confirm your scriptures. Okay, well, bye-bye. There went the main reason we're supposed to believe in Muhammad and the Quran, according to Muhammad and the Quran. The other main reason for Jews and Christians to believe in Muhammad is he's prophesied in our scriptures and we can find them. We don't, and every time you give us an example, it's a lie. So this is what we find when we actually investigate the case for your prophet. Not looking good.
Yeah. AP was on my channel like last week. We went through that whole the Paraclete passages.
Really bad,
because
right?
They'll say that. Oh yeah, they'll say that Paraclete in Aramaic was Ahmed, and that's just false. Actually, people don't realize this, but the Greek word Paraclete, that's Parakletos. That's probably the word or a similar word Jesus was using at the farewell discourse, because in the 1st century, that word from Greek was a loan word into Aramaic and Hebrew. Jesus wasn't saying Ahmed; he was probably saying Parakleta or Parakletos. So yeah, that alone shows Surah 61:6 is false, because nowhere does Jesus predict a coming prophet named Ahmed. He's talking about the Holy Spirit. So we went through, we replied to that channel, many prophets, one God or something like that. Horrible arguments. It just showed that's also false. So we did in 2 streams. Muhammad is not prophesied in the Torah and the Gospel, therefore Islam is false. Surah 61:6 is wrong. Surah 7:157 is also wrong, therefore Islam is false.
Pretty rough times, but glad you're paying attention. Let's take a few super chats and we'll check out the next video. Great to see powerful Christian mind. Oh, hi, IP.
He follows me around, does that.
It's because he's been ordered to pay a punitive sum. Oh, a punitive sum. Is that more? I don't know how that works. Is that separate from like court costs? So not just ordered to pay court costs, but also for wasting everyone's time and suing them on such an idiotic case that is like, no, actually you're paying a lot more money because you just wasted a lot of people's time, which by the way was the goal, right? Keep in mind, this guy worships Andrew Tate and his like ability to mass manipulate way more people than hijab has been able to manipulate. And Andrew Tate brags about launching these frivolous lawsuits. Why? Because he gets all this money coming in for people supporting his site and stuff like this, and he'll use it to sue people. But guess what? People don't want to go to court and do all this stuff. So he brags about the frivolous lawsuits and so on. And Hijab decided, hey, how can I make this work for me? Well, you just found out, buddy. You just found out.
Here's what I just found. In UK law, punitive damages, also known as exemplary damages, are rarely awarded and are only available in specific limited circumstances. They are not a standard remedy for breach of contract. So this is rare. This is how bad he lost the case. Like, this is not something that just happens with every case. It happened in this time because it was just so obvious that he was a liar.
Absolutely. So, and I mean, think if you read the transcript, he's just acting like a chest-thumping caveman the entire time, arguing with everyone, insulting people. You obviously don't even know the English language, and huge embarrassment. And the judge is like, "Yeah, know what? Let me slap some punitive damages on this
Benjamin Netanyahu is a Hindu what? Who's not a Hindu?
Yeah, his hijab's lawyer's like giving his closing statement, and hijab's there munching on donuts and sucking the sugar off his fingers and making a big spectacle. It's just, gosh, he took all the skills, and you just saw it from that young TikTok dawa clown. This is how you act, and this is what gets you attention from the dawa fans. But then, you're supposed to act different when you go into court. Hijab didn't. He acted in the same way that would impress his idiot followers, and he thought this would be impressive to a judge. The judge is going to be like, wow, this is really powerful. What a moron, man. Swiss Apologetics says, scientists have found evidence of the sun prostrating before Allah's throne. They discovered that the sunspots are actually zabibas, you see? This would be the new powerful. What's funny is you could actually say that and make something from a Muslim saying that, and it would become the new argument. That's how crazy this is. The Quran is perfectly compiled to seed its own downfall. It's a miracle how the slightest scrutiny just eats it alive. God bless y'all. It is. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Inspiring fallacy and Diddy Wood. I humiliated you by making fun of your names. You see? Okay, no, I got to go back to showering Mojab with gold. Jokes aside, love you guys and keep winning. This is a big year for winning. If you like winning, we've not even seen the
end of it because behind veils still has more he's going to release. We're just waiting on the Diddy list to come out.
Oh yeah, and I'm about to post my second interview with Mohammed Hijab's ex-wife.
Nice.
Awesome stuff.
We are praying. We are definitely praying for her a lot, hoping that she gets through this.
Only miracle Muhammad did was putting smiles on all the Al-Zut men. Now, hopefully more people come to Christ. Yep. No one made the Al-Zut happier than Muhammad. Who's this Orthodox guy with you? Alibaba AP? Hopefully the true AP isn't being totally Al-Zuted right now in Londonistan by his Saracen enemies. Seems like AP's having fun over there, hobnobbing with all these important people. Meanwhile, I'm not even allowed in the country.
Very Islamophobic.
Watched one of IP's recent lives, and I love the way Than described Dawa. It really does feel like you're being slapped by a weak octopus. Oh, I'm screenshotting that. Is that what Than said?
Yeah, let me find you the clip. Can I play videos on my side through Ecamm or no?
Yes, you can. I forget which one browser makes it go to robot voice, and so if you go to robot voice, we'll know.
I'm in Chrome.
I don't know if that's one. You could just play it and see what happens. Worst case scenario, you go to robot voice. If that happens, then just sign out and come back in. But
yeah, so I've been introducing Than to Dawa, and just because Than is he's super like philosophical. He just wants to, like he really studies a ton of interesting stuff. And so like showing him the arguments of Dawa have been hilarious because his brain is like breaking. He's just like, wait, they're being serious? They actually think this is a good art? How are people falling for this? So his like whole brain is like collapsing. Hold on, I found it pretty quickly. Let me see if I can just put my screen up here. I don't know if it's gonna do the robot voice or not. But
robot voice. Everybody loves the robot voice. Want me to click on that?
Yeah, you can try. Let me see if it'll play the audio. Yeah. So this is us just going through the arguments that Muhammad is prophesied in John 14-16. And this is poor Than losing his mind.
I hear no audio.
That's what I was worried about. Yeah.
We got to click share audio.
Wait, where is share audio? There's nothing that says share audio.
I don't know.
All right, let me figure that out. I don't see anything that says share audio. This is why I use StreamYard, not this crappy Ecamm crap.
I don't know either, but you got like Jai always shares audio, so it can be done.
Let me see. I'll figure it out.
All right. That is pretty funny, though. Slapped by a weak octopus. I'm stealing that, and I'm going to pretend like I came up with it, and everyone's going to be like, "Wow, David's so smart! What a great smackdown!" I'll be like, "Yep, I'm smart." Also, I love how you made fun of Orthodox Lips Muslim that tried to make a Chad face and giggles for minutes. Good laugh. That's never going away. That's never going away.
Apparently, Testify was making fun of his lips like months ago, and we all missed it. I can just show you the image actually really fast on his channel. Because he did it in a video, And like, yeah, it was like, holy crap, how did we miss this? But yeah, Testify was doing this months ago. He actually did up. So here, let me stop sharing that. Okay, let me share screen this. This is the opening of Testify's video.
Okay, let's see. So notice there was no. I didn't see that. Right? People just notice that he does like duck lips when he's in his pictures and stuff. It's like he's always like this, taking selfies. And now he's known as forever as Orthodox Lips. Never going away. Never going away.
Powerful.
I don't know if a fly's wings have healing powers, but the beer definitely tastes better when you fully dunked the fly. I can confirm that.
Dude, that's something they were doing on TikTok a while ago. They were trying to say that there was actually a study published by Muslims trying to claim that, you dip a fly and it actually has antibodies on it. And it's like, you actually read like the study and subsequent studies, it doesn't actually say that. So they were just lying again. Like, I couldn't believe it.
What's great, Nabil tried arguing something similar with camel urine. He tried to actually defend it with camel urine, and he did try to defend the fly wings. Fortunately, it did not last because Nabil was smart enough to actually receive correction when this stuff. I'm sitting there, Nabil, dude, you're in medical school. you're in medical school. Okay, you're gonna start giving your patients camel urine and dipping flies in it. Come on, be serious. Anyway, I still have a lot of the emails he was sending me, trying to defend this stuff. I should just post those one day. It'd be funny. Steven says, in the new Superman movie, he discovers his Kryptonian parents left a secret message for him to dominate the world and build a harem. Sounds familiar. Yes, those are the ones who actually sent Muhammad, and Muhammad decided to obey that. Play Sal's new Holes vid, super dope. Oh, I have to check it out later. I have to actually, I don't have to, I could set this up, but I'm terrible with technology. So I download stuff and play it. Let's see. It's afraid we got Islam on the ropes and it knows. It's afraid we got Islam on the ropes and it knows. Yep. These are rough times for Dawa. Al-Zut split Muhammad's moon. That's true. That's true. It's called Picatrix, Ancient Arabian Astronomy. It's called the Picatrix. I'm going to screenshot that. I'm going to look it up, see if you're making up words or if it's real.
Yeah, it says if you want me to share audio, it says I should be able to share audio. So I don't know if it's something on my end or your end, but everything looks like it should be able to share audio on my end.
Okay, let's see what happens. So Arabs, remarkable astrologers long before Islam. Yep, and Islam didn't help them at all. Okay, want to share that?
You can try. It says share, so it should play, but yeah, I don't know why.
Nope, no audio. Do not know what's going.
Pretty lame setup you got
here.
But yeah,
except that's not on my end. That's you going into your audio settings and making sure the output goes somewhere, or whatever else, something like that.
This is ridiculous.
Bunch of nerd stuff, man. A couple more, and then we'll jump back in. 1:40:55 into the second debate. Which religion respects Jesus and his teachings more? Daniel loses from that one question. But the Jews! It's a new Dawa tactic. If we just complain about the Jews, the entire debate, people will think we won. Evil. A creepy man cuddles a teddy bear to deceive children on TikTok. Good. David beheads a teddy bear to warn about the dangers of child marriage in Islam. Actually did do that once. If Satan fooled Mo that a verse was from Allah, how do we know the correction wasn't Satan fooling him again? Leads to a cycle of epistemic uncertainty. Yeah, with the satanic verses, early Muslims thought, oh, okay, he delivered satanic verses, but Allah pulled him out of that. It's like, wait a minute, this guy couldn't tell the difference between a revelation from Satan and a revelation from God, and neither could his followers. How do you not see the problem here? Muslims argue the same way as atheists. Atheists, people back in the day were so stupid, they believed in a sky daddy. Muslims, how could Muhammad know this? People nowadays forgot where we got our knowledge from. Yeah. That's true. The target demographic for TikTok Da'awa is 12-year-olds and adults who still ask their parents to schedule their doctor appointments for them. This is true. It must be a miracle in Islam that Momo and his leather straps survived the men of Al-Zut in the desert. Do you know what that smells like? Yep, probably pretty bad. The evidence, drink camel pee-pee. Yes, that is the powerful evidence. I mean, keep in mind, it's like, I want to go through the Muslim sources because I can think of several off the top of my head, and just arguments that Muhammad and Allah use that Muslims will never use because they understand how bad it is. So, Muhammad confirms your scripture, therefore he must be a true prophet. Muslims won't. I've never heard a Muslim use that argument. It's Allah and Muhammad's main argument for why we should believe in it. But there's all these other stuff like, look at this mole on my back. The Jews and Christians know that if a person shows up with a huge mole on his back, this will be the proof that he's the prophet. Stuff like that. Like, where are they using this? Why aren't they using that? It's one of the main arguments in the Hadith that Muhammad had this giant mole that supposedly showed that he's a prophet.
There's the other two in the Quran are like, that no one can produce a surah like it, and Muhammad is predicted in our scriptures. Like those are the three, like that the Quran uses, and they're garbage. Pretty bad.
I studied astrology. Many stars have Arabic names. Moon mansions are an astrological term for signs of the zodiac. There are 12 astrological houses. Yep. Or mansions, as we read in the Quran. Here's something scientific about the Quran. When put in an oven preheated to 451 degrees Fahrenheit, it ignites. How could, was that Ray Bradbury? How could Ray Bradbury have known this? Al-Zutwa would have ignored the Diddy line. Ali Zutwa, oh yeah. Or Ali Mutta, whatever. Let's see. TikTok, no. S can be saddening. Numbers can be saddening. Yet you guys have chariots of fire around you. King 617. I pray you based geezers not discouraged. Have faith. D-Wood IP. Masses follow broad road. We are to enter. Matthew 7:13-14. Oh, don't forget the very next verse, 7:15, which warns against false prophets.
Yeah, I'm having a ball. I mean, the more that Muslims try to attack me, the more I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just attack your religion more. Like, they don't realize that the more personal attacks and lies they spread, the more it just makes me want to go after Islam. If they would be honest and probably ignore me, I'd probably go back to just, doing what I was doing a couple years ago. But the more they do this nonsense, the more it makes me want to attack Islam. If they would shut up, stop insulting, stop lying, I would have moved on by now.
Yeah, and I've had sort of a similar response in that back in the day, I was very respectful. I'd present information that they did not want to hear, Muhammad and Aisha and stuff, but I would be respectful when I was sharing this information. And they tried to convince me to keep my mouth shut by sending me endless threats to kill me and to do things to my wife and mother and all this stuff. And it's like, guys, that's not going to give the reaction that you want. It caused me to become more aggressive towards Islam. Matter of fact, guys, think about it. When I started studying Islam, there was one purpose. My best friend was a Muslim. After he became a Christian, if you had not started threatening him and attacking him, I wouldn't have been dealing with Islam at all. You guys did this. You guys did this. You are making your own enemies and then whining about the enemies that you have made. What a dumb bunch of nonsense. Hey, Leif here says, Teddy bear, blink twice if you're being zooted.
That's good.
Surah Al-Gruma 6:9, if their age is on the clock. Looking at his face, I think he's on Tahweed. He's smoking a little too much of that Tahweed. The great proof of baseless, vague claims. You'd think that if they really were hidden knowledge, we'd get use out of it before the knowledge was found. Yeah. So in other words, if the Quran did contain these scientific claims, you'd think that would lead to some advancement in the Muslim world or something like that before Western academics and scientists find this stuff out. And then, we conveniently found it in the Quran, although 14 centuries of Muslims never saw it there.
Right.
Did Mo actually prophesize anything correctly? Yeah, a couple things. He prophesied that if he delivered a false revelation, Allah would sever his aorta. There's that one. A hadith that I brought up in my debate with Daniel Hakikachu, Muhammad said, this is the time when knowledge will depart from the Muslim community. And you look today, they don't even know what the Quran says about the Bible.
Yeah.
It's totally correct. Totally correct. Yeah. So if you wanted to say he's a prophet, base it on that. But then, of course, Allah killed him. So there's that. Muhammad did prophesy his aorta being severed. Yeah, this person already answered it. That's correct. I love you guys. Thank you both for what you do. Yes, we love what we do too. How about this scientific miracle in the Quran? How could the Quran have knowledge of modern historical sciences and know to confirm the Bible? Checkmate D with an IP. That is a little side note. It's like, even if you found something amazing, this is the same book that over and over again says it's confirming our scriptures, and you say Allah doesn't mean it. And when we point out these verses, they say, oh, well, maybe these are unclear verses. Well, maybe any verse that you want to point to for a scientific miracle is unclear. IP, D. Wood, your stamina for putting up with these TikToks is crazy. Thanks for combing through it all to display their ignorance so we may learn from it. Oh, that's all IP. IP's the one sending me these clips to check out.
Yeah. Well, I was engaging with us a couple months ago on TikTok and thought it'd be a fun stream anyway, because, again, there's an easy way to prove the Quran using this, and the Muslims never use the basic scientific method to do it.
And we're about to see that. Learned a ton from you guys about Islam. Thank you for your work. That's why we're here. Would YouTube benefit from videos about Christian allegory in movies and also using movies and art to show how Islam is evil? You just have to try and find out. Lipiano following the sunnah of Derek Zoolander. Oh, yeah. He's using blue steel, his look. Glad Avery's leathered straps have been opened to the eloquence of Muhammad, his powerful eloquence. Jake Meta Nerd says 547 means the Torah and Injil in the 7th century had enough truth in them for them to know what Allah's true message was. So why do they need the Quran as a filter of what's true or false?
Where is this mysterious Torah and Injil that was in the 7th century that we don't have today, that was different from ours? Like, now, see, we're creating, so you're creating a different set of scriptures. Where are they? Why did the early church fathers who lacked the gift of brevity mention this? Why didn't we see anything hinted to this in the New Testament? Where is this other Torah and the Injil that confirms Islam, or at least partially confirms that they were using? And why didn't the Muslims preserve it after the rise of Islam?
And if that's what Allah really meant, why didn't he say that? All he says is, Jews judged by your Torah, Christians judged by your gospel.
And also, like, this just shows the Quran is not for all people in all times. If it's only giving advice to certain Christians in the 7th century in one regional place, like, how is this actually a book for guidance for people in all times and all places?
Not looking good. Not a good year. Mole in the back, code for Al-Zut. You see the proof. Yes, that is definitely the proof. There's a scientific miracle in the Quran. How can Muhammad know the sun sets in a muddy spring unless God told him? Yeah, that's one that hasn't even been confirmed yet by science. But when it's eventually confirmed, they'll be using that. There's a channel and Instagram account called Reverted Muslims filled with Western converts, mainly women. Maybe we're targeting it to deconvert them. That'd be Instagram. Might have to check it out. Look at how Dawagandists treat the families of their opponents. Meanwhile, my worst enemy's kids would be safe and well-fed in my house. Yeah, not so much your children around the Dawa guys. And thank you, Cake. All right, we're ready to jump into this next video, man.
Let's do it.
So what's this next one? What do we got here?
This is so my video got like it got like 900,000 views, so it pissed off the Ummah. So they had to respond. And this was them trying to defend that guy's horrible misreading of the Quran to say there's a scientific miracle. And this I was originally going to ignore this, and then I was like, this actually gives me an idea to like do a video showing how the scientific miracles can be proven and why Muslims never use this for some stupid reason.
So there's another Muslim?
This is a Muslim called Islamic Apex.
Say?
I don't know.
I'm trying to see what his shirt said.
Venus?
Jesus?
Yeah.
Jesus. It says Jesus. And it's got a Native American skeleton. What is this, man? Images are haram, dude. Weird sect are you from?
Good point.
You don't even know the basics. You're going to... All right, here we go. Ready?
Assalamu alaikum. Watch till the end.
Proof that Islam is the truth. So I want you to look at this picture right here.
Got everyone see what Dawa has become? It's this and Lily J. This is what Dawa is in 2025.
This is a pattern of how the moon moves throughout the sky. And now I want you to look at this picture. This is an old date stock. They look pretty similar, don't they?
Uh-huh.
Well, according to this verse of the Holy Quran, Allah will cause the moon to move like an old date stock. This is exact proof that Islam is the true.
Yeah, Brownie Sa'id is actually correct. This is a very good piece of inductive reasoning to prove the religion to be true.
This, everyone see this? This is a very good piece of inductive reasoning. Quran says, "Hey, the moon, the moon after it disappears and comes back, looks like an old dried up date stock because they're both sort of yellowish crescents. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. How could anyone have known this? But I confirm it. I confirm it. Yes, he has spoken the truth. He spoke the truth on TikTok. He's a super genius. He's a scientific miracle. Oh my goodness, guys.
Powerful.
This is because there were not Arabs back then who actually knew how to study astronomy or how planets moved or the moon.
Yeah, they didn't know how to look
Ancient
up at the
people.
sky. They didn't know. You could just look up at the sky, guys.
Thales in what's now Turkey. Over 1,000 years before the time of Muhammad, predicted a solar eclipse. Guess what? I could predict a solar eclipse by looking it up on the internet and seeing when a solar eclipse is going to come. He predicted it by kind of just, these guys were observing the motions and so on and making predictions.
Knew how to track the course of the moon as well as many other celestial bodies.
You simply saying that ancient people knew how to track the course of the moon or other celestial bodies does not make it the case, right? The citation you...
I don't like. They'll say the dumbest stuff, and then that's the proof. We respond with sources. And I'm like, well, just because you said it and had a source, that doesn't mean it's true.
up on your background does not say that they knew how to identify what the moon pattern looked like or any of that. In fact, their explanation of the moon and how they knew how to track it was very simplistic. Clearly, it isn't as advanced as how the Quran describes the moon pattern.
It isn't as advanced as how the Quran describes the moon pattern. It isn't as advanced. The Quran doesn't describe the moon pattern. The Quran describes what the moon looks like when it returns. And it says it looks like one of those old dried up date stalks, crescent shaped. But even if you said, I think it's talking about notice there doesn't say anything about an S shape or anything else in there. But even if you granted that, dude, he's putting the burden of proof on you. You have to show us that people didn't know that the pattern that the moon is in 7th century Arabia. Show us that. We'll still reject the argument because not even what the Quran says. But dude, you're trying to show us that this is a scientific miracle. You go to a verse that no Muslim interpreter interpreted to mean what you say. And then you're saying you've got the correct interpretation. Why? Because one of your guys here saw it on a stupid video from 20 years ago before all this stuff was debunked, and you guys don't know any better, and you're just so desperate for anything to confirm your religion, you'll even cling to flat out lies, just complete lies. This is what's supposed to impress us. This is what, oh man, this is mind-blowing. How's this dude, the only thing that's mind-blowing is like, how could people be this stupid and deceptive? And how could Muslim Dawah guys think that this is a good idea to spread this nonsense when they're just setting you up for more holes in the narrative? That's the amazing part to us. Not, oh my goodness, the Quran says the crescent moon looks kind of like a crescent date palm stalk. Oh my, what's just a proof? Stupid.
Yeah, the burden is on them. Like again, this is insane. Like he's like, oh, you need to prove that like they didn't know. No. You need to prove that this is actually a scientific miracle. You guys haven't done that. Like, it's crazy the burden of proof that they have. Again, it's the burden is always on us to debunk Islam when they haven't even given us any good evidence to trust Islam. It's insane.
Yeah. So if you wanted to show us that this is amazing or miraculous scientific knowledge, you have to show, step one, you have to show that the Quran is saying what you're saying and not what 14 centuries of Muslims thought it was saying. You somehow have the amazing understanding. In which case you'd have to wonder, Is it even possible that the Quran was clearly talking about that if no one ever got that message? How are you going to say with a straight face, yes, this is what the Quran is clearly saying, when no one ever understood that? So that's one. And then if you show that that is what the Quran is actually saying, you figured it out, you cracked the code, 14 centuries of Muslims, they all got it wrong, but you got it right, you got the correct interpretation, then you have to show us that people couldn't have known this at the time. That's what you need to do to show. You're not doing either one of those, and your entire argument is, trust me, bro. No, we don't trust you. You come from a community, the Dawa community, that is filled with the biggest bunch of liars I have ever seen in my entire life. You are the last. I'm not talking about Muslims in general. There are Muslims that I would trust. You guys, the Dawa guys, you guys could tell me 2 + 2 is 4. I would look it up on paper because that's how big of liars you guys are. All right.
Anytime I see them cite a study, I'm like, okay, I got to go read this study. Like, I remember Kenny Bomer citing a study in his debate with Tom Jump. I actually went and read it and found out, yeah, it was, again, total crap. But I mean, like, again, every time I've never seen a Muslim really cite a study, and I go read it, and then I find, oh yeah, they represented this perfectly. 9 times out of 10, probably 99% of the time, they get something. They're cherry picking it. They're misrepresenting it. They're outright lying about it. I mean, it's usually one of those options.
And it's built into the system. So we go through all these Quran verses confirming the Bible. What do? They look for anything they can reinterpret as disconfirming our book and say, see, that's what it's saying. And they throw out everything else. What is that? They cherry pick with their own book. They cherry pick with the Hadith. They cherry pick with their commentators. And now what do? They cherry pick verses that they can twist into saying something scientific. They cherry pick the meaning that completely flies in the face of everything. Then what is this, guys? Dude, if this is how you need to defend your religion and no one can do it better, kind of tells us something about your religion, sport. Not looking good. Yep. All right, let's see what he's got here.
Now, the point regarding the celestial bodies is just completely redundant because it has nothing to do with the conversation. We can conclude that, in fact, this is a scientific miracle. Nonetheless, if you want to learn more about...
Anyone catch anything that suggests that there's a scientific miracle? No. What do? This is the proof! You saw the other guy. This is the proof! This is the proof! And then, I disagree with IP. So, obviously, this is a scientific miracle. This is how they argue. This is meant to deceive stupid, ignorant people who just, he sounds confident, so I'll just go with him. I will trust this bro.
Scientific miracles in the Quran. Check out Deen Buddy. They offer a weekly trial in which you can try the app and see if...
Wow, Deen Buddy's going to have some scientific miracles.
...like it or not.
We should check
As you can see here, I asked it, can I get a scientific miracle in the Quran?
Whoa, we have another scientific miracle. Hang on. Okay, what? Does he read this, or is it just on the screen for us? Because I'll read it if he's not going to...
He does not read it. No.
Okay. Deen Buddy, what's on your mind? Can I get scientific miracles in the Quran? Okay. Deen Buddy says... It's wonderful that you're interested in exploring the scientific aspects mentioned in the Quran. The Quran contains many verses that touch upon various scientific phenomena. Whatever he says, we're going to look it up, guys, and watch what happens when we look up whatever comes after this. Watch what happens. For example, in Surat Al-Anbiya, verse 33, Allah mentions that everything in the universe, including the stars and planets, is in motion. So we're going to go to this verse, and it's going to say everything in the universe, including the stars and planets, is in motion. This aligns with what we know today about the continuous movement and expansion of the universe. Another example is the mention of the development of the human embryo in the Quran, which corresponds to stages of embryology as understood by modern science. No, it roughly corresponds to what the view was in 7th century Arabia, like where they thought you go through a blood clot stage and so on. That's what it corresponds to. No one thinks the Quran is right on blood clot stages and so on. That's not a modern development. But little side note, we're about to look into some of the biological stuff with a later video here. All right, so what do we got?
Surah 2133. It's powerful, so powerful.
Is it? Is it going to be? Is it going to blow our minds?
It's going to talk about things floating in orbit.
Let's see. 21:33. All right, so we're going to see this. We're going to check it out, guys. And I just want everyone to notice, what's the first thing you do when these guys say, hey, there's a verse? First thing you do, look up the verse. Why? They're fans. They don't even have that basic step in mind, right? Oh, he says it's a miracle. It says right there on Dean Buddy, it's a miracle, so it must be a miracle. Keep in mind, what are they asking? What are they talking about? What did he request? Scientific miracles. Scientific miracles. See what the verse says. Surah 21, verse 33. And he it is who created the night and the day and the sun and the moon. They float, each in an orbit. What's this talking about? What? They believe that the sun and moon orbit the earth. So is this
why doesn't
is this
it
confirmed?
say no, but why doesn't it say the earth and the moon orbit? Why does it say the sun and the moon float in orbit? That seems to be a helio or a geocentric model based on a simple reading of this.
Mm-hmm. And where are you getting everything in the universe is in a state of motion? The sun and the moon, they float each in an orbit. The sun and the moon, they float each in an orbit. What were you talking about? He was talking about planets and stuff. Why didn't you say sun and the moon, they float in an orbit? Why? What'd you say planets and stars? What's it say? Sun and moon.
Right.
Let's go through a couple translations, make sure we're not misunderstanding this. It is he who created the night and the day and the sun and the moon. All, and then look what you have Yusuf Ali do. All the celestial bodies swim along, each in its rounded course. So all the celestial bodies swim along, each in its rounded course. Is that even correct, that every celestial body does that? Guys, they think the sun and moon are orbiting around the flat earth. That's what they think.
Right.
And he it is who has created the night and the day and the sun and the moon, each in an orbit floating. And he it is who created the night and the day and the sun and the moon. All orbs travel along swiftly in their celestial spheres. Did you catch Shakir here? Yeah. The sun and the moon are traveling along swiftly in their celestial spheres. So you got the earth, and then you've got these spheres around it. And the sun is following one of those. You guys getting this? IP.
Yo.
Did that sound like what Dean Buddy said?
Nope. Doesn't sound at all. It sounds more like this is a scientific inaccuracy. If the sun and the moon are orbiting, not the moon and the earth. This looks like geocentrism. Yeah,
so guys, think about this. So what does the Quran sound like it's saying? It sounds like, hey, the sun and the moon are traveling around. You have other Quran verses that sound like this. It has them sort of chasing each other around, and one cannot catch up to the other, and so on. That's what the Quran sounds like it's saying. Even if you wanted to believe that, even if you said, no, that's correct. I'm a geocentrist and so on. Well, then what would be the miracle? Because what he just said was a common view in the ancient world. So which one is it? Is the Quran actually stating the correct view? If so, where? Or if you want to say, no, what modern science says is wrong and the Quran gets it right. Okay, he gave exactly what Muhammad and his companions thought about the universe. So where's the miracle? He just showed, if you want scientific miracles, go to Dean Buddy. That's what he came up with. That was his number one go-to scientific miracle. Look, the sun and the moon are orbiting. What is this religion?
If they would just take like a non-concordance view, like, because, like people today will say, yeah, the sun is rising. We don't think when we say that the sun is going around the earth. It's just a common aspect of language. It's the elocution, or it doesn't mean the literal meaning of our words. If they would just say, like, take that, I'd be fine. But they want to say that the Quran contains scientific miracles. Okay, then it's a scientific textbook. Therefore, we get to look at this in its most literal way possible, because you made it this, because you set this as the standard. Okay, if this contains scientific miracles, it better be as literal as possible in terms of what it's saying. If you just accept it's a book from Arabia, they're using the common language of the day, fine, but that's not what they're doing. So they have a different view than how we would even view the scriptures, because over and over again, biblical commentators will note, yeah, this isn't a scientific textbook. This is just using common language of the day to describe things. But Muslim apologists want the Quran to be a scientific textbook. So therefore, we're allowed to look at this as literal as possible because of the standard they set for their book, not the standard we have for ours.
And guys, if you want to put together what the Quran and the Hadith say about the universe, you get something like this. Down at the bottom, you have some giant fish or whale, and then there's other stuff below that. But you got this giant fish or whale, and then you have 7 Earths, 7 flat Earths stacked up like pancakes on top of that. And then you have the sun and the moon, and they're sort of going around that top flat Earth, except you have the sun and it goes down into a pool on one side and then comes out of a different pool on the other side. And then on top of that, you have these 7 huge domes, which are solid and would fall on us if Allah didn't hold them up. And under the lowest dome, that's where the stars are. Okay, so that's what you find if you actually go to the Quran. What did Allah get right there? Apart from there is a sun and there is a moon, he got nothing right. So how is this science? How is this miraculous scientific knowledge?
Powerful. It's powerful stuff.
Everything they give is deception. Let's see what he says here.
If you think that you like the app, you can.
Okay, so guys, we read Surah 21, verse 33. And what's it say? In Deen Buddy. So what can we confirm? I have no idea what Deen Buddy is. It's some app or whatever. But guess what? Deen Buddy is a liar program with lies to deceive morons. Surah
I'm pretty sure he's trying to sell that, like, more people that sign up, he gets like a cut because he pushes it in a lot of his videos.
If you want to pay to be deceived and you really love lies, get Deen Buddy. It'll lie to you all day long. We read the verse. It's talking about what does the verse say? Sun and the moon in their orbits. How do they describe it? Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 33. Allah mentions that everything in the universe, including the stars and planets, where did it say stars and planets? Is in motion. This aligns with what we know today about the continuous movement and expansion of the universe. Oh my goodness, how could I have known it? Doesn't say one word about any of that. You liar. You liar. And you don't care. You could point all this out to this guy. I guarantee you, I have no idea who this guy is apart from this video. I guarantee you he will not care even slightly. And more so, I guarantee that none of his viewers, whoever his fans are, they won't care at all. It's just understood that it's okay to deceive people to get them to believe in Islam. So they don't see anything wrong with it. And it doesn't affect people's trust in them. This is a sick religion based on deception. But let's go ahead and let him finish here. Got 20-some seconds left.
Scientific miracle in the Quran. If you think that you like the app, you can choose to continue and subscribe. And if you don't like it, you can cancel it at any time. Alhamdulillah, that concludes the video.
Wow.
Make sure to keep Gaza and the people of Palestine in your prayers.
Wow.
Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Powerful.
Are you Muslims even trying at this point?
Yet people will still deny.
Gee, I can't imagine why.
Yeah, so this is the guy who we were refuting in our video, guys.
Wow.
What? Like me standing there?
That was the most powerful dawah I've ever seen in my life. This is what we're up against, guys. We're in a race. They're racing to see. They believe they can lie to people faster than we can correct the lies, and that's what's going on. We're in a race. They're saying we can lie faster than you could correct our lies. That's what we're doing here. Let's take these couple super chats, then we'll jump into IP's response because he actually tries to help these guys.
Yeah, and I sent you that clip of Than in your email if you wanted to play it. It's like 30 seconds long or something.
You mean download it, crop it, transfer it.
See, this is you use Ecamm. You don't get mad at me for using. This
I don't have to do any of this for Ecamm. It's just how I do it because I don't know Ecamm. I don't know how to use it, even though I've been using it for like 10 years. I was sitting. Cameron uses Ecamm, and he's sitting there doing. I'm like, whoa, you can do all this stuff on Ecamm. He's like way more sophisticated, doing all this awesome stuff. And I was like, I don't know how to do any of that.
Sounds about right.
Let's see. Asking this as a Jew, doesn't Ezekiel 18:20 contradict the concept of the original sin? In fact, the Old Testament doesn't really speak much about the afterlife.
Ezekiel 18:20, is that what he said?
Yeah, that's about the children not being
This
punished
says
for the.
Yeah, the soul who sins shall die. The son shall not suffer for the iniquity of the father, nor the father shall suffer the iniquity of the son. No. First of all, most Christians, early church fathers, took the idea of original sin being that we're passing down in sinful nature. This is the main view in the Orthodox Church. It started to change around Augustine, where he said they pass on a certain guilt. And that came more popular in the West. So no, if it's passing down a nature, which is the view I hold to, no, there's no contradiction here.
Yeah, and I have to say, human beings having a sin nature, I'd have to say I can't think of a more empirically verifiable claim in the history of theology. If you want to say human beings have a sin nature, I would regard that as one of the most empirically verifiable claims ever. So,
yeah.
Let's see. Cake says, "Bless you, Brother Daoud. I pray your Diddy line holds tight tonight. Awesome stream. Hold the Diddy line. Thoughts on C.S. Lewis's allegorical views on Islam in the Chronicles of Narnia?" Not familiar with that.
I don't know how Islam is represented there. That's not my go-to fantasy work.
Yeah, I think I read the first one like before it was the prequel. It's about the guy with the ring and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, it's the only one I read. I was regarded as like kids'
Wait,
books.
it sounded like you just said Lord of the Rings. The guy with the ring, you know.
There was the first one. It was a guy who had rings, man. That was the prequel.
Okay.
And then he did something, and it grew a tree, and then they used the tree to make the wardrobe, and that's why the wardrobe was magic.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, I never read that one. So,
Freedom of Information Act: 75% of Christians, but only 40% Islam countries. I don't know what that means. 75% of Christian, but only 40% of Muslim countries.
I think he's saying that countries that have Freedom of the Information Act are mostly Christian.
Oh, okay. But wait, there's more. The Islamic infinite loop. Yeah, there's more. We've got more powerful. The Mayans had impressive knowledge of astronomy, and they didn't use any steel tools. What makes the Quran so spectacular again? And they're not even right about what it's claiming. I'm South American. Sadly, I start to see more and more Dawagandists in the streets wearing robes and Puma sneaker shoes, trying to fool people with these miracles. Yeah, that's why we need people in other countries speaking other languages refuting this stuff. Feel free to take anything I put into a video, one of my videos, translate it, say it, record yourself in your own language saying the same thing. You do not need to credit me. I do not care. Go wreck this stuff. Muslim eyes are always so dark without an ounce of a sparkle. It's actually scary. As a 23-year-old girl, anytime a young Muslim so much as smiles at me, it makes me want to run because they look predatory. I guess I'm an Islamophobe. You do sound like an Islamophobe.
See?
Have donned Mohammedan garb to counter Dawa like you. That helps. I ended my long-term relationship with a girl after I figured out that she has been having a secret emotional affair with her coworker. It's killing me. It's affecting my self-worth and sanity. Please pray for me, David and IP. Well,
yeah,
you probably shouldn't be with her. So what's the point?
Get in a good church. Find a good community that can help you. That's what I always say.
Yep. All right. Ready to check out this next video? So this is you actually trying to help them, right?
Yeah, look, you want to show there's scientific miracles in the Quran. There's a simple way to do it. Look, the way this sort of works is if you're going to have a scientific textbook or something that's supposed to like help you study the natural world, you're going to put in the Quran predictions. Then you should be able to take those predictions and go out in advanced science. So like if your Quran says, like, I don't know, like stars are missiles that Allah shoots at eavesdropping demons. Okay, let's get some astronomy going. Get some telescopes up there, focus some stars, and see if Allah is throwing them at demons. If you think semen comes between the backbone and the ribs, do some work there. So there should be predictions in the Quran that you can use to go out and advance science, but we never see that. We never see that. Instead, the West, the Christian West, has done most of the work in advancing science. And then the Muslims come along after we've made discoveries and they go, oh, this was in the Quran the whole time.
Isn't it amazing?
Why didn't you say so? Like, why didn't you tell us? This would have saved us so much time. But no, we can do all this work, publishing the studies, doing the experiments, getting the research verified, and then we get it all out there. The scientific community accepts it, and then a Muslim goes, by the way, we knew this the whole time. It's like, sure you did, buddy, sure.
This is Dawa, ladies and gentlemen.
Proof that Islam is the truth. This is a pattern of how the moon moves throughout the sky. And now I want you to look at this picture. This is an old date stock. They look pretty similar, don't they?
Uh-huh.
Well, according to this verse of the Holy Quran, Allah will cause the moon to move like an old date stock. This is exact proof that Islam is the true religion.
Hey, guys, notice, see, when we're talking about not trusting these guys after we see how they argue, so he gives one of the dumbest arguments, completely crushed in multiple ways the moment you start examining it, and he calls this the conclusive proof.
Yep.
Okay,
Powerful.
if that's what if you regard a terrible argument based on nothing but deception as the conclusive proof, that tells us what you regard as conclusive proof. You are a person who will think that the stupidest argument imaginable is conclusive proof. Okay, we see why you follow Muhammad. The idea that this would be impressive to us is absolutely insane. What has Dawa done to your brain? Look at you. Look at you, dude.
Yeah, Brownie side is actually correct.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
This is because there were not Arabs back then who actually knew how to study astronomy or how planets moved or the moon.
If that's the case, then the Arabs were pretty dumb in comparison to the surrounding cultures, but that's also very unlikely. First off, ancient Mesopotamians had a system of astronomy, as Assyriologist Eckhard Frame notes. Systems of astronomy were also obviously known to the Greeks and the Romans, and as Robert G. Hoyland notes, there was cultural exchange between the Arabs and the surrounding cultures. But observations about the moon also show up in pre-Islamic poetry, which tells us they were observing it and writing about it. So it's far more parsimonious to realize that the Arabs were able to observe the movement of the moon, or get systems of astronomy from the surrounding cultures. They didn't need divine knowledge for that. As I noted last time, ancient people knew how to track the course of the moon, as well as many other celestial bodies. Are you Muslims even trying at this point?
You simply saying that ancient people knew how to track the course of the moon or other celestial bodies does not make it the case, right?
No, I cited experts saying ancient people knew how to do this, and it's not hard to see why. If you have 2 working eyes and patience, you can observe celestial bodies moving throughout the night sky.
The citation you put up on your background does not say that they knew how to identify what the moon pattern looked like or any of that.
So this is nothing more than an exact word fallacy. Russell Lawson notes they did develop systems of astronomy and were able to observe the movement of the moon.
In fact, their explanation of the moon and how they knew how to track it was very simplistic.
And his sources, trust me bro, actually people as far back as the Stone Age were tracking the moon. By the time of antiquity, they had developed pretty accurate models of astronomy. The Ptolemaic model, although imperfect, was useful enough for tracking many celestial bodies as well as for navigation. But in the 5th century, they had developed a competing model known as the Capellan model, which tells us that ancient people were very much interested in tracking celestial bodies and coming up with more accurate models. Modern astronomy didn't develop in a vacuum. What got us to this point was a series of great minds making small steps along the way. At no point did the Quran need to come in and tell us something that we humans already knew.
We can conclude that in fact this is a scientific miracle.
That's right, folks. It's a scientific miracle that the Quran mentions the movement of the moon, something anyone in the ancient world with 2 working eyes and patience would have been able to observe. But this brings me to something important. Muslims often claim the Quran must be from God because it allegedly contains scientific knowledge that no one at the time would have known about. Of course, this is nonsense, as even Ali Dawa had to admit.
One of the reasons I accepted Islam was the scientific miracles. I'll be honest with you. And now we know that this whole scientific miracles was actually nonsense, not in total. But guess what? Allah led me to Islam. One of the reasons was because of the scientific miracles. And guess what? Did I leave Islam when this whole scientific miracle thing got debunked? No.
Everyone notice what he just said? Allah used the scientific, which he says has been debunked. In other words, my goodness, He believes Allah deceived him into believing in Islam by using a thoroughly debunked argument. So Allah tricked him into believing that Islam is true. Guys, when you worship a God that you think tricks and deceives you into believing in their religion, do you understand why they don't see a problem with lying? Do you understand? If you deceive people into believing in Islam and then you spend eternity deflowering virgins, I helped you by lying to you.
Yeah.
That's what they believe that about God, and they believe that that's what they're doing is okay. How would you ever trust someone who believes that God wants them to trick and deceive as many people as possible? How? How do you trust these guys? It's insane. Absolutely insane. Let me back that up. I want to make sure everyone caught that.
Nonsense, as even Ali Dawa had to admit.
One of the reasons I accepted Islam was the scientific miracles. I'll be honest with you. And now we know that this whole scientific miracles was absolute nonsense, not in total. But guess what? Allah led me to Islam. One of the reasons was because of the scientific miracles. And guess what? Did I leave Islam when this whole scientific miracle thing got debunked? No, I stayed because I grew in faith.
The scientific miracles in the Quran got debunked. I'll repeat it again very carefully. The scientific miracles argument in the Quran got debunked. Debunked. It is debunked. Yes, it is debunked. And we don't need it.
Of course, there are no scientific miracles in the Quran, just vague verses that can be interpreted in multiple ways and were reinterpreted after modern scientific discoveries were made so Muslims can pretend the Quran always knew about these discoveries. If these were actually scientific miracles, these verses should have led to these discoveries, but they didn't. Which brings me to a challenge for Muslims. If you want to show the Quran contains scientific miracles, there is a way to go about this. Find something the Quran says about reality, and then go out and discover it using scientific experimentation. To give an analogy, there was a show called Raised by Wolves, which is a sci-fi future where a Mithraic cult rose up and defeated all opposition. The reason they were able to do this was because they discovered scientific formulas encrypted in their scriptures, which they used to create advanced technology. If the Quran contains advanced scientific knowledge, then Muslims should be doing something similar, using the Quran to create scientific progress. But that's not what is happening. Instead, the supposed scientific miracles of the Quran were either known by ancient people or were discovered in the modern West, and then Muslims only reinterpreted various passages to pretend that the Quran always knew about these discoveries. But Muslims, you can fix this. Find something the Quran says about reality that has not yet been discovered by modern science and go out and make those discoveries. Maybe you can show that semen really does come from the ribs and backbone. Maybe you can show that shooting stars really are missiles sent by Allah to attack eavesdropping demons. If you're successful, you will demonstrate there are scientific miracles in the Quran. So good luck.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty simple. Yeah, use that show as an example. Like that show Raised by Wolves. It's a parallel universe where there's no Christianity. Instead, the Mithraic cult is the main religion. And they had like scientific formulas encoded in their scriptures, which I think would be a powerful argument for their religion. So they use that to build all these incredible, like technologies like spaceships and weapons to fight off the opposing side, which was the atheists. Why don't Muslims do that? Why are they not advancing science in so many ways? It's mind-boggling. And people want to bring up, well, the golden age of Islam, the golden age, I'm telling you. Well, share my screen. Let's debunk this nonsense as well. So this was a presentation I gave in Britain recently, and pointed out that, yeah, the golden age is blown way out of proportion. Most of what was going on through that phase was when Muslims were making advances in science, they were using it. They were using anything they could to support what they would call the Islamic sciences. So basically the idea was different in Christianity. In Christianity, we have different institutions. Science can develop into its own thing. In the Islamic world, no, everything needs to be under the umbrella of Islam. If the foreign sciences can help Islam, then you can study them. If they don't, you throw them out. So they studied sciences like Aristotle, Plato, the Greek philosophies, as much as it helped Islam. So they developed trigonometry because they needed to know which way to pray to Mecca. But so that it's helping them with their Islamic aspects. Once that was done, they just didn't care anymore. So Toby Huff says this. He says the so-called Islamic sciences were those devoted to the study of the Quran, the traditions of the Prophet, legal knowledge, theology, poetry, and Arabic language. For the purpose of dividing inheritance, arithmetic was also an important subject of study. Moreover, due to ritual and religious prescriptions, timekeeping found it necessary to use geometry and eventually to invent trigonometry in order to arrive at the requisite calculations to determine the direction up to Mecca. In short, driven by both curiosity and religious motives, the Arab Muslim world from the 8th century to the 14th century achieved significant heights of scientific advance, but thereafter went into decline and even retrogression. Why? Because once they used the foreign sciences as much as possible to help Islam, they just discarded it. They didn't care anymore. He says this, for those who believe that the Quran is a complete book of knowledge, an explanation of all things, there was little inspiration left to investigate things apart from showing that all things are ordained by God and explicated in his holy book. In the quest for infallible knowledge, Ghazali found no hope in philosophy, much less theology. Whoever claims, Ghazali wrote, that theology, abstract proofs, and systematic classification are the foundation of belief is an innovator, which was a term for heretic and non-believer, subject to death. So if you were an innovator, you were a heretic. Consequently, he cascaded those who wallow in systematic theology. For those who pursue that course, who delve into arcane logical and philosophical analyses, are in grave religious danger, according to Ghazali. He says, it is the simple folk who are far from this danger, and the rest of those common folk who have not waded into research and inquiry, not wallowed into systematic theology as if it were an absolute standard of reference. Another book, Clifford Bauckham in the Worlds of Medieval Europe. He says, in order to not challenge orthodoxy, cultural and religious prescriptions have restricted Muslim intellectual life. The empirical sciences like astronomy, mathematics, and medicine pose no threat to Islamic teaching and therefore receive the support and encouragement of the Muslim state. But feels like philosophy were another matter altogether. Muslim scholars had produced numerous translations of the works of Plato and Aristotle, among others, and had written extensive commentaries on them. But very little original philosophical work had been done. Moreover, these scholars who had ventured into these fields were regarded with disapproval by most of their contemporaries. Even a figure like Ibn Rushd, the greatest Aristotelian scholar of his age, was a marginal figure in their Islamic intellectual world. Distrusted for his insistence that because certain passages of the Quran contradicted the truth derived from Greek philosophy, those passages were not therefore to be read literally, but instead to be reinterpreted metaphorically. Ibn Rushd was something of an intellectual outcast, summoned before the local Almohad ruler to answer the charge of apostasy. Ibn Rushd lied and swore that he had never even read the works of Aristotle, much less actually translated or commented upon them. Now, his works were embraced by the Christian West, and they read him far more in the Christian West than they were reading him in Al-Andalus, in the Muslim world abroad. So this is just one of those ironies. Like, yeah, they did advance science in ways that would help them with their Islamic religion. Once they were done, Toby Huff says they regressed. They went on to decline because they had used the Greek philosophies as much as they could to help them in their study of Islam. Once they were done, they discarded the foreign sciences, focused on what they called the Islamic sciences. They didn't care anymore. I like to show this chart. It's really interesting. So this is the height. This is how good the anatomical pictures in the Islamic world got that Toby Huff points out. This is the height of how far they got. Meanwhile, Christianity, a couple centuries later, they're doing this kind of stuff because they were not limited by this idea that they could only study the sciences as far as it advanced their religion. In Christianity, they had the concept of the two books, the book of scripture and the book of nature. You could study nature as much as you want because that's going to reveal God to you in different ways. So they were able to make far more advances. Toby Huff says this, one can say that the Europeans, unlike Muslims, had in fact launched a program of empirical inquiry into the constitution of the human body, and part of that inquiry necessitated dissecting human bodies. Conversely, post-mortem examinations for forensic purposes in the Islamic world were said to be strictly forbidden, as they were in China for different reasons. Not only was there an aversion to dissecting pigs, as well as the human body, Islamic medicine education of the time was devoted to the memorization of texts. So Islamic thought forbid going near pigs, dissecting bodies. Christianity was more open to this. It allowed for so many medical advances the Islamic world just simply could not make. This is why Toby Huff has to conclude modern science came out of the Christian West because of things inherent in Western thinking, Christian thinking. Meanwhile, these were lacking in Islamic thinking. And there's just so many interesting examples I cover in this presentation I gave. Even think like the separation of church and state helped science advance. Islam obviously lacks that. So many important things. But yeah, there was a ton of facts I just wanted to cover quickly about the so-called Islamic Golden Age, because Islam really was not the powerhouse people think it was behind science. It only progressed scientific aspects as so far as it helped Islam, which is not science really. You're just using something as a means to an end. Modern science came out of the Christian West because we allowed it to become its own institution, which really gave rise to modern science, which gave rise to all of our technology.
And think about how what you just said ties into what we're seeing in these little Dawa videos. You're pointing out they were only interested in science when they thought it was going to be of some benefit to the Ummah. And then, of course, once they find out scientific discoveries are conflicting with Islam and so on, well, so much for science. We need to not focus on science anymore. And if you focus too much on science, we're gonna label you an innovator. And Muhammad said all innovators go to hell. But anyway, think about how that ties in. We're only interested in science as a tool for doing something for our religion. What are these Dawa guys? Is you guys interested in science? Are they studying embryology and astronomy and anything else? No. They're looking for things they can point to say, oh, this confirms this Quran verse. It's only science is just something that is supposedly going to help their religion. And when you point out, actually, it doesn't, that's not what the Quran's saying, that's not what science is saying, so on, they have no interest in it anymore.
Yeah. And also, I mean, in the research I find, no one said that like there was like specific passages in the Quran they used to make predictions and then went out and made scientific discoveries. That's not what happened. They had issues in Islam that they needed solved, so they studied the Greek philosophy and foreign sciences, as they called it, to help them solve issues in Islam. It's not like the Quran helped advance science. The Quran was not a perfectly clear book, and so they had to go out and search for other things to help them with figuring out how to do certain practices the Quran prescribes, how to understand certain things in the Quran. It wasn't the Quran advancing science. Meanwhile, a lot of the authors I will read will note that there were specific Christian doctrines that did help advance science, like the doctrine of the fall. So this was actually crucial. Like Noah J. Ephron will note this. James Ungariana will note this. That was crucial for the scientific method. Why? Because our reasoning capabilities are good, but they're marred from the fall. So we need to do constant experimentation to verify results. So the actual doctrine of the fall helped to create the scientific method. And they know there's numerous other ways that Christian doctrine, specific things taught in Scripture, help to give rise to modern science that just were lacking in the Islamic world. So no, the Quran itself did not help advance science. Meanwhile, the Bible actually did, surprisingly.
Yeah, I think some of in addition to what you were pointing out, which we find in the writings of the pioneers of the scientific revolution, some of the other things that were very important. One, believing that the universe is intelligible, so it's capable of being understood by a rational agent, and you certainly wouldn't get that in atheism. The reason for thinking that the universe can be understood by a rational agent is that you believe it was created by a rational agent, and they viewed God as like this cosmic architect and so on, who's making the heavens and so on. So you would think Islam would share that important component. So Allah's making things and so on. Main problem is, there's something else that's important. Namely, Christians believe that we are created in the image of God. They believe that we're the kinds of beings that can actually understand what God does, and therefore we can go out and figure this stuff out. It's out there. The laws of nature, they're out there waiting to be figured out. They're created by God, and we are the kinds of beings that can actually figure these things out. That component is lacking in Islam. in Islam, you're almost like defined by ignorance, and you only know anything because Allah reveals it to you. So you're completely ignorant, and Allah gives you some knowledge. You are not meant to figure things out. You are meant to be like an empty receptacle of Allah telling you certain things in his special revelation. There's no concept of let's go out and figure out how the universe works. If you try and go out and figure out how the universe works, you're trying to figure out stuff that only Allah knows, or it's beyond something that Allah told you, and you're actually in quite a bit of trouble. You see this in the Muslim sources. When you have in the Quran, Surah 88, where it talks about Allah spreading out the earth flat and so on, check out the commentary of Jalalains, the two Jalals. They specifically say, this clearly shows that the earth is flat and not a sphere as the astronomers argue, right? They're setting up this difference. This is what the astronomers say, but we know from Allah. Who are you going to listen to? Astronomers? You're going to listen to Allah. Allah says flat, they say sphere. So who are you going with? And so, yeah, that's what happened. They don't think of human beings. In Islam, human beings aren't things created in the image of God to go out and do amazing things and figure out amazing things. And so why would you do it? Why would you do it?
Yeah.
You're actually in trouble if you start doing that sort of thing. And guess what? No science. And you have to wait for other people to figure these things out and then say, oh, but it's in the Quran. We found it. It's pathetic, man. It's actually pathetic, man.
Yeah. If you want to put that quote up, I have another one from Toby Huff, because he says the same thing you said. He says it was not just the conception of the lawful nature, natural order with man serving as co-creator that was rejected by the religious scholars of Islam during its formative years. It was an often repeated Islamic doctrine, as we have seen, that God has no partners and none shares any attributes with God. That view seems to imply, as suggested by other writers, that man cannot have more knowledge than God. While such foreign knowledge could easily be seen as undermining religious belief, a common fear among Muslims, especially those committed to the Sunnah of the Hadith tradition, the opposite of the Christian credo that man was created in the image of God. So he says the exact same thing you just said. I mean, this is coming from, a sociologist historian. Like, clearly, like, Christian ideas of the image of God helped to create this idea that we can study science and do these things. This was just lacking in the Islamic world. This is why modern science came out of the Christian West, not the Middle East.
And now you've got a bunch of people terribly envious and trying to claim that their book is somehow the source of scientific knowledge and so on. Guys, it's so pathetic.
Yep.
It's so pathetic. Anyway. All right, we got one more clip, man. One more clip. Guy goes in a totally different direction, but I actually saw this one.
Oh.
This is a response to me.
Oh, right. Yeah, I sent you this one. This is funny.
Yeah. IP sent me this morning. This is powerful. About to get some powerful dawah here. Here we go, guys. You'll find these kinds of things all over the Quran. The Quran claims that semen is formed between the backbone and the ribs.
So this is regarding these three verses from chapter 86. Verses 5 and 6 together teach that man was created from an ejected fluid. And verse 87 is translated to say, emerging from between the backbone and the ribs. The word translated for emerging is yakhruju. Now there are two classical understandings of this verse, both of which refute this being a supposed...
That's a lie.
Yeah.
Two classical views, and he's going to go, and he's not going to even give the classical view. Watch this.
Translated for emerging is yakhruju. Now there are two classical understandings of this verse, both of which refute this being a supposed scientific mistake. The first is that the word yakhruju is referring to the fluid being ejected, which we would understand to be the seminal fluid. For those who aren't aware, seminal fluid is not primarily produced in the testes, but in the seminal vesicles, which are in the abdomen of the male. And the
abdomen? Like very low abdomen, as in the pelvic region. Would you describe the pelvic region as between the backbone and ribs?
No, David.
Yeah, you can kind of get the bottom. You can kind of get the bottom of the spine if you're including the tailbone. It's kind of in that region, but I wouldn't describe that as between the backbone and ribs. Backbone and ribs seems like up here. This is where it sounds like. Sounds like up here, right? Seminal vesicles are not up here, okay? None of the relevant parts are up here, dude. Anyway, let's see what he says.
Second opinion, which is actually held by Al-Qurtubi and by a number of other mufassirin, is that yakhruju is referring to the man being created. In other words, it's the man emerging from between the backbone and the ribs, as opposed to the fluid. We'd understand this to be referring to childbirth. And both of these understandings are considered valid, and either one would refute this being a scientific mistake.
They're not, even the baby is not between the backbone and the ribs, dude. Like, come on. Oh my gosh. The desperation they go to save this obviously false book.
Yeah. Dude, backbone and ribs. The baby's further down. So he thinks.
Listen, we have to start from the beginning. When a man loves a woman, sir, okay, all right, they get together, and then the baby forms lower.
Loves a woman. All right. Okay, guys. So his response there is, you've got the Quran saying that, think about what man's created from. Created from a gushing fluid proceeding from between the backbone and ribs. Notice it's the fluid and so on that gushes forth from between the backbone and ribs. And he says, two interpretations. One, it's referring to the seminal fluid, which comes from multiple places. So you got the sperm and the testes, you've got the prostate, you've got the seminal vesicles, and these sort of combine. None of those is between the backbone and ribs, guys. None of that is between the backbone and ribs. So no, your response doesn't work. And look, this is the other thing that works. So what do we know, guys? I don't follow TikTok, but apparently what works on TikTok and for some of these shorter videos is you either have to be sitting there with a teddy bear going like this, or you just get this smug smirk on your face the entire time.
Come on, guys. So
Like
obviously not an error.
Yeah. So one, he says, haha, the Quran is correct because it's talking about the seminal fluid, which part of which is produced in the seminal vesicles, which he says are in the abdomen. Okay, not between the backbone and ribs, buddy. Right? Doesn't say abdomen. It says between backbone and ribs. So that's not going to work. And the other interpretation he gives is talking about childbirth. Baby comes out. Okay, that baby was not between the backbone and ribs either, dude. So wrong and wrong. But the thing I picked up on rather quickly was he said these are the two classical interpretations, dude. You're leaving out the main classical interpretation. You're leaving out the number one go-to classical interpretation of this verse. But we won't. I'll bring it up. We'll check it out. You ready to have your mind blown, IP?
I'm ready. Yes, I'm totally
All right,
ready.
so let's go ahead and read the verse in multiple translations because there are people who try to come up with some interesting translations to get around this. But let's make sure we got the verse down. So it's Surah 86, and it's 5 through 7. Surah 86, 5 through 7. And so we'll read multiple translations of verse 5. So let man consider from what he has created. Or now let man but think from what he has created. So let man see from what he has created. So let man consider of what he has created. So let man consider of what is created. Think about this. When Allah's saying, hey, think about what you're created from and so on, kind of seems like you know what he's talking about, right? He's telling you to think on something. Think about what you're created from. Okay, well, this doesn't seem to be miraculous scientific knowledge. It seems to be something. He's telling you to think about something. Hey, you know this. Think about this. All right. Next verse. Think about from what he has created. He is created from a gushing fluid. He is created from a drop emitted. He is created from water gushing forth. He is created from water pouring forth. He is created of a gushing fluid, created from ejected liquid, created of water, created of gushing water. He is created from water poured forth and so on. No, guess what? You are not created from water gushing out of your mother. That's not what you're created from, right? In other words, that's kind of where you live for a while, but that's not what you're created from. So even that's not going to work. But let's the relevant portion here. This water pouring forth, or this fluid gushing forth, where does it come from? That issued from between the loins and the ribs, proceeding from between the backbone and the ribs, proceeding from between the backbone and the ribs, coming from between the back and the ribs. Guys, Sher Ali, which issues forth from between the loins and the breastbones. So they're going back and forth between translating the back part as loins or backbone. But they're agreeing on the ribs and breastbones. What's that mean? It's up around your ribs, guys. It's up around your ribs. So, is that where your seminal vesicles are? No. Is that where babies are? No. So, even if we went with his interpretation, does this work? No.
No.
Well, what's that mean? What's that mean? It means his response is meant for people who are just looking for a response and don't care about actually seeing if the response is valid and so on. It's just like olive dawa. Hey, I'll say words in response to this, and I'll say it with a smug, arrogant look on my face, and that's enough to convince my followers. Well, yeah, that does work, but don't act like that's supposed to impress us, because it doesn't.
And even if people still are having a hard time, here's a helpful picture so people can see just where the baby is in a woman. Here's the anatomical structures here. I'll share my screen. I'll put it up.
There we go.
Yeah, look.
Hey, right there between the backbone and ribs, as the Quran says.
Exactly as the Quran says. Yeah. So, yeah. Even his interpretation obviously doesn't work because that's not near the backbone or the ribs. That is way, way, way further down. This should have been blatantly obvious to him.
But that is dawah. All right, now let's look at some more problems for this guy. So, all right. Here's an AI overview, since that's what these guys are all obsessed with now. AI, but AI says. Okay, semen is produced in the male reproductive system. Specifically, it is created in the following organs. Testes, sperm cells are produced in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. And then you got the seminal vesicles. These glands produce a fluid that contains fructose, citric acid, and other nutrients for the sperm. Then you have the prostate gland. This gland produces a fluid that contains enzymes and other substances that help activate and protect the sperm. And then you have the bulbourethral glands. These glands produce a fluid that lubricates the urethra and helps to neutralize the acidity of urine. All right, so we all got that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's a picture. I even censored it for you in case you guys have some kids. So anyway, down there at the bottom under the censored part, that would be the penis and testicles and so on. But you're looking at a butt here. You've got the butt area, the pelvic area. You see the bottom of the tailbone there. Look what you have. You got your bladder. Then you've got right there beside the bladder, you've got the seminal vesicles.
I can't believe this is what we have to do to refute dawah. Like, this is the kind of crap we have to do.
Yeah, so would you describe that as between the backbone and ribs? Again, I pointed out, you kind of could say it's if you got the tailbone there, so you could say backbone, like very, very bottom of the backbone. Your ribs are like 1,000 miles away, guys. Your ribs are really, really far away. Not the correct area. But hey, just sound really condescending when you say it, and that's all that it takes to do dawah. But we're about to have some more problems here. Ready? Because he's talking about the classic interpretation. I do want to point out, you have in the hadith, it's clear that Muhammad thought that semen, which is actually a part of you, it becomes you, actually comes from the backbone. Here's a hadith. Ready? Sahih al-Bukhari. This is on the creation of Adam and his offspring. Not just creation of Adam, but his offspring. Narrated Anas, the Prophet said, Allah will say to that person of the hellfire who will receive the least punishment, if you had everything on earth, would you give it as a ransom to free yourself, i.e. to save yourself from this fire? He will say, yes. Then Allah will say, while you were in the backbone of Adam, I asked you much less than this, i.e. not to worship others besides me, but you insisted on worshiping others besides me. Isn't this interesting? So, one, not only were all of us once in the backbone of Adam. Why? Because that's where Muhammad thinks semen is. And the semen is what creates us and so on. So this Muhammad, he actually thought it's in the backbone of Adam. It's in the backbone of Adam. That's where we all once were. But I have to say, it's also interesting that Allah thought he could talk to us during this time and we'd listen and be give good responses. So say, hey, while you were in the backbone of Adam, so while we were little sperm drops in the backbone of Adam, he asked us to do not very much. He said, hey, don't worship others besides me, but we insisted on worshiping others besides Allah. Shame on us. Shame on us. We didn't listen when we were sperm. Not sure how sperm are going to listen, but when we were sperm in the backbone of Adam, which I don't even recall that, but Muhammad said it's true. So guys, he does think semen is in the backbone.
This makes Mormonism sound logical. This is how bad this is. Like, I would, if I had to pick, Mormonism any day, like, because it's just, this is so bad. This is so bad. And these are the same people who want to say, yeah, Islam is true because of all our scientific miracles. You've got to be kidding me.
Mm-hmm. But we're on the track of a bigger problem that leads right into the classical interpretation, right? Notice, in the Quran, it says between the backbone and ribs. So fluid gushes from between the backbone and ribs. Here, the fluid in Adam is in his backbone. Well, what's going on with the ribs? Let's check out some classical commentaries. So this is Tafsir Jalalain, short little comment on that verse, 86:7. What's he say? It refers to issuing from between the loins of the man and the breastbones of the woman. You getting this? The classical interpretation is that between the backbone and ribs, backbone is referring to the fluid of a man, and ribs or breastbone is referring to the fluid of a woman. Got it? So it's talking about two different fluids here. So this is Tafsir Jalalain. Here's the Tafsir of Ibn Abbas, that issued from between the loins of a man and ribs, the ribs of a woman. Getting this, guys? Everyone getting this? The fluid from the man comes from the backbone. So when the Quran says man is created from fluid proceeding from between the backbone and ribs, the classical interpretation, which our friend conveniently left out, and he said there's only two classical interpretations and then didn't give the main classical interpretation. The classical interpretation is the fluid from the backbone refers to the man's semen, and the fluid from the ribs refers to the woman's semen. The woman's semen. Yes. What is this? What's actually going on according to the classical commentators? This is what's known as the two semens theory. The two semens theory. That there's semen from man and semen from women, and they mix together. And once they mix together, then you're going to get a child. And I want to point out, let's go ahead and
I think that would make the trans community very happy. Yes, of course, women have semen. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Let's check out another Quran verse real quick. Interesting. Look at this. You actually have it in the Quran. Depending on the translation. Some of the translations will try to look for an alternative. But let's go ahead and read a couple translations and then you'll catch it. So Pickthall. Lo, we create man from a drop of thickened fluid to test him. So we make him hearing, knowing. So he translate this as thickened. Yeah, nice try. Let's look at some other translations. Yusuf Ali. Verily, we created man from a drop of mingled sperm. Mingled sperm. What is mingled sperm? In order to try him. So we gave him the gifts of hearing and sight. Hilali Khan. Verily, we have created man from nutfa drops of mixed semen. They even put in parentheses in Hilali Khan, discharge of man and woman in order to try him. So he made him hearer, seer. Got this so far? Got it?
Uh-huh.
Mixed. It's mixed. It's talking about the fluid of men and women mixing together to produce the child. And let's go ahead and check out here. Got this? This is the Tafsir of Ibn Kathir, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tafsir of Ibn Kathir on the passage in Surah 86, 5-7. How man is created is a proof of Allah's ability to return to him. Allah says, what's he say? Because we know it's going to be awesome. Allah says, so let man see from what he has created. This is alerting man to the weakness of his origin from which he was created. The intent of it is to guide man to accept the reality of the hereafter, because whoever is able to begin the creation, then he is also able to repeat it in the same way. This is as Allah says, and he it is who originates the creation, then he will repeat it, and this is easier for him. Then Allah says, he is created from a water gushing forth, meaning the sexual fluid that comes out bursting forth from the man and the woman. Thus the child is produced from both of them by the permission of Allah. You get that, guys? Why did our Muslim friends say, hey, there are two classical interpretations, and he didn't give the classical interpretation? Why? Because the classical interpretation is a completely debunked theory. Again, it's called the two semens theory.
Yeah.
And let me just, we'll go through three quick hadiths where you start seeing where they're going with this. But
real quick, I just want to show Quran.com. I should put my screen up there because this is the deceptive of this website. This website is always so deceptive. So it's like, for we indeed alone, we created humans from a drop of mixed fluids. And if you go up here and you look, we indeed created man from semen drop mixture. So you can see it in the Arabic if you scroll across. But down here they say, yeah, it's just mixed fluids. See how that works?
So we want to go with the classical interpretation. By the way, there are only two serious ways to look at this. There are two serious ways to look at this verse, guys. One is it's talking about where semen is produced, in which case, guess what? Semen is not produced between the backbone and ribs. It's not. So the Quran would be wrong. I normally go with that because it's obviously wrong and you don't have to bring in all this other stuff. If you wanted to bring in a bunch of other stuff and get to the classical view, then you've got the two semens theory, and it's wrong. This is another Islamic dilemma. It's another Islamic dilemma. If the Quran is saying what it sounds like it's saying, and that it's talking about semen, then it's wrong because semen does not come from between the backbone and the ribs. If the Quran is advocating this two semens theory, that the semen from the backbone is from the guy and the semen from the ribs is from the woman, that's completely outdated and debunked. Either way, Islam is wrong. How is this a scientific miracle? But let's look real quick. Sunan ibn Majah. It was narrated from Anas that Sulaim asked the Messenger of Allah about a woman who sees in her dream something like that which a man sees. In other words, you're having a sexual dream and it causes you to have an orgasm or a wet dream. Muhammad believed that women can have wet dreams and that they actually release their semen. So the Messenger of Allah said, if she sees that she has a discharge, then let her perform a bath. Salama said, O Messenger of Allah, does that really happen? Do women get discharged like men here? He says, yes, the water of the man is thick and white, and the water of a woman is thin and yellow. Whichever of them comes first or predominates, the child will resemble that parent. So we can kind of ignore how wrong that last part is, that one fluid is going to predominate over the other, or whichever fluid is ejected first, that's going to determine which parent the child resembles. That's complete nonsense. But we'll ignore that. Look at what he says. Men have semen, it's thick and white. Women have semen, it's thin and yellow. They both eject this fluid, and then it combines together, and one of them predominates, and that's how babies are made. And so the desperate direction Muslims will go in when they try to defend this is they'll say, oh, the yellow, that refers to the woman's egg. No, it doesn't. It talks about discharge that she sees. She sees the discharge. You're not seeing the discharge of the egg. So whatever Muhammad's wives are leaking, that's not semen that produces that combines with male semen and produces a child. Let's read another one. Sunan an-Nasai. It was narrated that Anas said, the Messenger of Allah said, the man's water is thick and white, and the woman's water is thin and yellow. Whichever of them comes first, the child will resemble that parent. Good. Awesome scientific insight here, Muhammad. And here we have Sahih Muslim. Anas bin Malik reported that Sulaim narrated it that she asked the Messenger of Allah about a woman who sees in a dream what a man sees, sexual dream. So she dreams about some stud and stuff, and then what happens? The Messenger of Allah said, in case a woman sees that, she must take a bath. Sulaim said, I was bashful on account of that and said, does it happen? Upon this, the Messenger of Allah said, yes, it does happen. Otherwise, how can a child... Notice, he's talking about taking a bath. He's not just talking about something in your dreams. He's talking about a fluid being discharged in a wet dream. She says, does that happen? He says, yes, it does happen. Otherwise, how can a child resemble her? Think about what he's saying. If women don't have semen, how come some children resemble their mother? Women must have semen. Man's discharge, i.e. sperm, is thick and white, and the discharge of woman is thin and yellow, so the resemblance comes from the one whose genes prevail or dominate. It's funny they translate it as genes, like Muhammad is talking about genes. Nice try. How stupid do you think we are? So, guys.
Yeah, let's remember also Surah 565. If you're a Muslim, you have to submit to all of Muhammad's decisions. It says the true believers, they will accept you, O Prophet, as their judge in their disputes and find no resistance within themselves against your decision and submit wholeheartedly. So Muslims, you got to agree with everything Muhammad said. I mean, you got to believe this stuff, or you could just reject Islam, because it's basically because of that verse in the Quran, you're stuck in that dichotomy.
So here's the actual situation to all you Dawah bros out there. What the Quran sounds like it's saying, if you just read the Quran sounds like it's saying that man is produced from fluid that is ejected from between the backbone and ribs. If that's what the Quran is saying, then the Quran is wrong. If you want to go to the classical understanding of various tafsir guys who are looking at what Muhammad says in the hadith and trying to combine it all, and also with the Quran, which talks about mingled fluid and so on, mixed fluid, then you'd conclude that this is talking about male sperm and female sperm combining to produce the child. If that is what the Quran is saying, that's wrong. And we have our little Dawah buddy, and he tells us, hey, what it's either referring to a baby coming out, in which case that's not happening between the backbone and ribs, and so that would be wrong, or it's talking about part of the fluid in semen comes from the seminal vesicles, and, well, that's in the abdomen. Okay, pelvic region, not between backbone and ribs. Guys, we went through multiple interpretations. None of them work. None of them. But we're supposed to just listen to these guys. Well, they sound confident, and he's smirking and so on, so let's go with that. This is Dawah, guys. It's absolute deception. This is crazy, man. Crazy stuff. This is what we're up against. Again, it is a race. They're trying to deceive people faster than we can correct the deception.
I mean, at this point, if they want to just keep doing that, eventually all the smart people will be out of Islam and all the ignorant people will be in Islam. I don't tell them. This is a losing strategy long term.
That seems to be what they're after. And it's interesting because they win converts with this idiotic nonsense. Between 70 and 80% of converts to Islam leave within the first couple of years. So, guys, when you do this, you're actually creating more ex-Muslims than you're creating Muslims. And then you freak out. But why are there so many ex-Muslims? What's this avalanche of apostasy? You're causing it by doing nothing but telling lies. And your lies are being exposed. Mm-hmm. So sad for you. All right, let's take this last batch of super chats, and we'll be out with another tremendous victory over deceptive Dawah. Mike Winger, King of the Islamic Dilemma, says, have donned Mohammedan garb to counter Dawah like you. Oh, yeah, I saw that already. That's good. Good idea. I ended my... Wait, I already saw this.
Yeah, you did that one, yeah.
Here we go. I once knew a farmer who would call his pigs by shouting, zoot, 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 zoot. Fitting. Islamophobic, but fitting. Show me on the bear. Show me on the bear where Mohammedan touched you. It's one of the creepiest things ever. I mean, if you want to... Oh, my goodness.
It's TikTok for you.
Ali Zutwa's scientific miracle was how fast he stepped over the Diddy line. Even pre-Islamic moms fed children, showing moon, you see. That's powerful. But did anyone rescue the bear? The creepy man could have been performing all Zut rituals with it. Think about the bears. I know. No one ever cares about the little bears. Poor little bear. Eternal Segs in Jenna
Unbearable.
sounds like torture for your brain and your Zoot missile. I'd rather be in hell than participating in heavenly Epstein Island. Yeah, that's eternity in paradise. You spend eternity deflowering virgins and so on.
Isn't there a Quran verse about wide-eyed boys in heaven or something like that?
Yeah, they would interpret stuff like that about like as like servants and stuff. But anyway, so you got
the problem is Tom Holland noted in his book The Sword in The Shadow and the Sword that no, that was used in a lot of homoerotic Islamic poetry.
Well, that would be a shocker. Muhammad wouldn't do anything like that.
Yeah, actually, there's Tom Holland notes a really interesting story when the Muslims started conquering the things. So he says this on page, I think 396 to 397. He talked typical of the fate of Zaranj, a great fortress that commanded the approaches to the Hindu Kush, whose inhabitants had agreed as a term of their surrender to deliver annually 1,000 of their most beautiful boys, each one holding in his hands a golden cup, a delicious taste for the Muslims of the delights of paradise, which is the creepiest, most disgusting thing I've ever heard.
It's pretty creepy and disgusting indeed. But yeah, so every Dawa guy, make sure you got your teddy bear. Here's some Islamic math. One Ali Dawa plus one Momo hijab equals no Islam. You see the proof. Two wrongs don't make one right. That is true. These guys are doing our work for us. Along with good apologetics to help people that believe dumb Dawa arguments, where superior arguments may not help the naive, have and show love for them. This will help diffuse, not my team, friction and break down such walls. Yeah, it always helps if you're talking to someone and you actually become friends with them and so on, because you can that helps weather the storms of disagreement that will inevitably come. Does the rote memorization that Islam promotes have any negative effects on Muslim societies?
Nothing I've seen tied directly to that in the studies I have and the books I have. Not that specific thing. Now, Toby Huff does sort of note in that book I was quoting earlier that was what they were doing in the madrasas, which was not really like exploring scientific inquiry, doing like mathematical equations. Those were side issues. Most of it was rote memorization. So indirectly, it took away time from them doing, actual study that could have benefited the growth of science. So
yeah. So in other words,
nothing tied directly though.
Yeah. In other words, this is the Islamic concept of how you learn. You just sit around and memorize what Allah has said,
Right.
Not you go out and figure it out. And so it's not hurting you. Can actually be good if you're memorizing large amounts of information. That helps you, develop your brain. And but if you don't combine that with something actually useful, not going to help.
Right.
Muslims think God revealed the Psalms to David rather than David just writing them himself. Why would God write praises to himself? Well, I mean, he does that in the Quran, so that's not going to work against them. North Star sent you the proof on an X post. Okay, I'll check that out. I'll check out. If this year is the year of the Islamic dilemma, next year will be the year of our Lord Ezra. No. Next year is the year of crushing the Muhammad in the Bible argument and satanic verses. So, Little spoiler alert. By the way, IP, my creepy profile pic is Momo and Aisha.
Awful.
Always good. Mo probably had an extra pair of walnuts by his backbone.
Oh my God.
I just got it. Yeah, he was a mutant and he thought that's where it came from. Look at my balls are on my back.
That's the mark. That's the mark in the hadith he's talking about that proves he's a prophet.
What about viewing these Quran portions as poetic, similar to portions of the Bible? We don't think God knitting needles to make babies. We aren't making scientific claims, though. Yeah, you caught it at the end. We aren't making scientific claims, though. If you were just saying that the Quran is talking about common beliefs at the time, and so it's not claiming to be scientifically accurate, it's trying to make moral and theological points and so on, we probably wouldn't have a problem with that. That's not what they say. That's not what they say. They say this is the stuff that confirms it, because how could anyone know this? It's miraculous. How could anyone know this miraculous scientific knowledge? They're claiming that this stuff comes from in it. Okay, you just open it up. You open that up for yourself. Just like if someone were to say, hey, this talking about knitting a baby together. Oh my goodness, it's scientists just confirmed that babies are actually knit together with needles. And so, okay, then you'd be begging for someone to come and attack that argument. So the point is, we're not making the argument. If someone does, that's up to them. But then you have to defend it based on what you're arguing. So anyway, they've been presenting as one of their main arguments the scientific miracles. Okay, and IP already talked about this earlier. You talked about this earlier. That, okay, if you're presenting it this way, then we evaluate it according to what you're saying.
Right. We don't say the Bible has scientific miracles, and I've scolded Christians who've tried to do that, like very, very few, in my view. Not a lot. You might get some people around Answers in Genesis doing that, but like I did a video a while back called The Ancient Cosmos, with part of my series called The Cultural Context of the Biblical World. I just point out like they're using the language of the day. This isn't a scientific textbook. It's okay. If Muslims were to take a similar view, I'd probably have more respect for them, but they don't.
And to be fair, there are Muslims who do. They're just not the Dawa guys. True. And shame on those guys.
We're talking about the majority of the Dawa guys. The modernist Muslims, Ismailis, some of the Sufis. We're not focusing on them right now.
It is interesting though that so you don't open the Bible and then see E equals MC squared and stuff like that. What you find is the universe is created by God. You're created in His image. You can understand how he does things and so on, and that leads to science. And then, but the takeaway is not, you're not just going to be some thing that sits there, and God's going to give you this information. It's, you're the image of God. You go understand what God has done. And then you get modern science.
Yep.
Gulliver's Travels had more scientific miracles than the Quran. True. It said Mars had 2 counter-rotating moons and even described their orbits within about 20% error before telescopes could see them. Isaac Newton, all variety of created objects which represent order and life in the universe could happen only by the willful reasoning of its original creator, whom I call the Lord God. Isaac Newton. Yep. So think about this. Science emerges in the West. All of the pioneers of the scientific revolution were Christians of one variety or another. They were Catholics, they were Protestants, or they were occasionally a heretic. All of them believed in God and the Bible. And they explained why they thought they could figure these things out. And it was tied to their beliefs about the creator of the universe and about what they were. And so I would say no scientific hypothesis in history has more confirmation than that original scientific hypothesis. If we're right about God creating the world and about what we are, we're going to be able to go out and figure these things out. Every scientific hypothesis that has ever been tested, whether confirmed or disconfirmed, confirms that original scientific hypothesis. And so we have a mountain of evidence confirming those claims, which emerge out of Christianity. What do Muslims do? Oh, we found what you guys found. It's right here in the Quran. Doesn't even say it. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Yeah. Envy's powerful.
I'll have a video coming out in October called How Christianity Created Science. We're going into more of that in detail. Part of that series you told me to do on all the benefits of Christianity. Just loaded yesterday. Part of that series, How Christianity Created Human Rights. I'll do another one in September, How Christianity Educated the World. So yeah, going through a lot of that data right now.
All right, guys. Well, that's what we wanted to cover. We brought you up. We should probably do this like every couple months or something like that and go through some of the TikTok. Because keep in mind, it is, at the end of the day, it is a limited number of Quran verses that they go to. They're all terrible. But you just have to keep doing it over and over and over again until people catch on and recognize these guys are liars.
It's pretty bad, yeah. But yeah, I don't know, man. I go through TikTok sometimes. I'm just like, this is just so dumb. How do I really need to do another one showing, yes, Muhammad is not in Song of Solomon 5:16 for the 1 millionth time? Like, so much dumb stuff.
So yeah, it's not just the scientific miracles argument. It's all of Dawah. All of Dawah is just deception, tricking people into believing something and thinking that it's for their good. And we already saw from Ali Dawah. Ali Dawah believes that Allah uses deceptive arguments based on nonsense to get people to believe in Islam. Well, why not use good stuff, Allah? Unless Allah himself doesn't think he has any good stuff to actually defend his religion. Weird stuff. All right, any final thoughts on any of this?
No, you'll be on my channel, Monday? We'll go over Muhammad Ajab's raging about PBD podcast. Yeah, that's all I got.
Going to be very, very powerful. Wow, hijab, you say. Funny. All right, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Keep in mind, you gotta learn this stuff. And notice what we did here. Learning just one or two responses to these scientific miracles arguments, and then going out and finding the people who are using them, whether on TikTok or X or Instagram or whatever, and then just responding to those. It needs to come down to that. Because guess what? The vast majority of people who are seeing these stupid arguments on these other platforms and stuff like that, they didn't just watch what just happened, right? You have to learn it, take a couple of screenshots of some sources, and go refute them. And everyone needs to be working towards this because they are deceiving a lot of people. Again, we are on a race. Got to take it seriously. Oh, hang on. We got one more comment coming up from I've used this one in the past. Geometry is one and eternal shining in the mind of God. That sharing it according to men is one of the reasons that man is the image of God. Yep. They always connected it. All right, guys. Catch y'all next time. I will be here tomorrow.